The moment before everything changed, Livia Hart was falling. Not metaphorically, literally crashing through Monaco's marble lobby as a delivery van smashed through plate glass, sending her body airborne toward a granite column that would have split her skull open. Then iron hands caught her waist, yanked her sideways, and she slammed into a man's chest instead of stone. Above her, a scarred face with eyes like winter storms. Behind him, chaos. He held her suspended in that breath between disaster and survival. And when he finally set her down, she understood. Some rescues are more dangerous than the fall. If you're ready for a story about power, secrets, and impossible choices, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The diplomatic residence in Monaco occupied a cliffside position that made tourists stop and photograph it from the harbor below. Livia Hart had learned to ignore the spectacle, the way sunlight turned the building's windows into gold squares, the terraced gardens dropping toward the Mediterranean in calculated waves of bougainvillea and lavender. After 3 weeks, she'd stopped seeing it as beautiful and started seeing it as what it was. A very pretty cage her father had built around her latest attempt at independence. She stood in her bedroom, staring at the open suitcase on her bed. Inside, carefully folded between tissue paper, lay the dress she'd wear to tomorrow's gallery opening. Midnight blue silk that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her mother had picked it out before the divorce, back when she still believed clothes could shape destiny. "You look like you're contemplating murder." Livia turned to find her father in the doorway, still wearing his ambassador's uniform of pressed suit and diplomatic smile. Julian Hart had perfected that smile over 20 years of lying professionally to powerful people. She'd inherited his brown eyes and dark hair, but not his talent for comfortable dishonesty. "Just deciding what to wear," she said. "The Valmont opening." He stepped into the room, hands in his pockets. "I've been meaning to talk to you about that." Here it came. The speech about appropriate behavior, strategic networking, remembering she represented the United States even at art galleries. Livia had heard variations of it her entire life. "Dad." "I know." He held up one hand. "You're 22. You have a master's degree in art history. You're perfectly capable of attending a gallery opening without supervision." She blinked. "Who are you, and what have you done with my father?" His smile turned genuine for half a second. "I'm trying, Liv. Your mother pointed out, before she left, that I have a tendency to treat you like you're still 7 years old." 7 years old. The age she'd been during the incident they never discussed. The reason her childhood was split cleanly into before and after, with a gap in the middle no one wanted to examine too closely. Livia turned back to her suitcase. "I appreciate it. However," there it was. "I want you to be careful. Monaco isn't like Paris or London. The money here is older, and the people who have it are used to getting what they want. I'm going to an art gallery, not a casino. Sometimes there's less difference than you'd think." He moved to the window, looking out at the harbor lights beginning to glow in the early evening. "Promise me you'll stay aware of your surroundings. The diplomatic community is small here, and people talk." "Meaning what?" He was quiet for a moment. "Meaning you're the American ambassador's daughter in a city that runs on secrets and leverage. Just be smart." After he left, Livia stood at the window and watched the sun sink toward the water. Below, the city was transforming into its nighttime self, the version that appeared on postcards and Instagram feeds, all golden lights and elegant architecture, beautiful and entirely false. Her phone buzzed. A text from Claire, her roommate from Oxford. "How's Monaco? Met any billionaire playboys yet?" Livia typed back. "Just politicians and their wives. Send help." The truth was more complicated. Monaco was gorgeous and suffocating in equal measure. Her father had arranged everything with his usual efficiency. A position at Galerie Valmont, one of the most prestigious contemporary art dealers on the Riviera. A luxury apartment she'd move into next month. Introductions to the right people, invitations to the right parties. Everything except the thing she actually wanted, which was to figure out who she was when she wasn't Julian Hart's daughter. She picked up the small photograph on her dresser. Her mother, laughing at something off camera, younger than Livia was now. Before the marriage, before the ambassadorship, before everything got complicated. Sometimes Livia wondered if people were simpler before they learned what they wanted. If innocence was just another word for not knowing what you were missing. The photograph next to it showed Livia at 19, standing in front of the Louvre. She'd taken a gap year after undergraduate, spent it working at a small gallery in Paris's 6th arrondissement. Those 12 months had been the freest of her life. Anonymous, self-sufficient, nobody's daughter. Then her father had called with news of the Monaco posting and the Valmont opportunity, and she'd said yes because it felt like progress. A real position at a real gallery. Exactly what she'd studied for. She just hadn't expected it to feel so much like returning to a cage she'd barely escaped. The next evening, Livia stood in Gallery Valmont's main exhibition space and tried to look interested in a conversation about negative space. The woman talking, Isabelle, wife of a French finance minister, had strong opinions about minimalism and had been sharing them for 15 minutes. Of course, the relationship between the work and the viewer is entirely subjective, Isabelle said, gesturing with her champagne flute toward a canvas that appeared to be entirely white. But I find the artist's restraint quite moving. Livia said, which she'd learned was the correct response when you had nothing to say but didn't want to seem rude. The gallery opening was exactly as her father had predicted. Beautiful people in expensive clothes, discussing expensive art while servers circulated with champagne and canapes. Livia had been introduced to at least 30 people whose names she'd immediately forgotten. Everyone was polite, interested, and utterly insincere. "You'll have to excuse me," she said when Isabelle paused for breath. "I see someone I need to speak with." It was a lie, but Isabelle nodded graciously. Livia escaped toward the back of the gallery, past a sculpture that looked like twisted metal and cost more than a car. She found a quiet corner near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor and pressed her champagne flute to her forehead. "Not a fan of negative space?" She turned. The woman beside her was maybe 60, silver-haired, wearing a black dress that probably cost a fortune but looked simple enough to be from anywhere. She had the kind of face that suggested intelligence more than beauty. "I'm a fan of honesty," Livia said. "That canvas is primed white and nothing else." The woman laughed. "Marie Valmont, I own this gallery." "Oh, God," Livia felt heat flood her face. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean—" "Relax." Marie sipped her champagne. "You're absolutely right. The artist is a friend of my nephew, and I agreed to show his work as a favor. It's terrible. But 3 people have already made offers because they assume anything in my gallery must be valuable. That's depressing. That's Monaco." Marie studied her with interest. "You're Julian Hart's daughter. Livia, correct? Starting with us next month." "Yes, I'm looking forward to it." "Are you?" Marie's gaze was sharp. "Most people your age would rather be somewhere less—" She gestured at the room. "Calculated." Livia considered lying, then decided against it. "I spent a year in Paris, working at a gallery in Saint-Germain-des-Prés. It was smaller, less prestigious. The owner let me curate a show for emerging artists. We barely broke even, but the work was real. And now you're here, drinking champagne with people who buy art as investment portfolios. Now I'm here." Marie was quiet for a moment. "Your father asked me to look after you. He's worried about something. He's always worried about something." "This is different." Marie's expression turned serious. "Monaco is a small city with very particular rules. Your father has made powerful friends here, but he's also made enemies, the nature of diplomacy. I'm not involved in his work. You don't have to be. You're leveraged simply by existing." Marie touched her arm lightly. "I'm not trying to frighten you, just suggesting you be careful about the company you keep. Not everyone who seems charming actually is." Before Livia could respond, there was a commotion near the gallery entrance. Voices rising, someone laughing too loudly. Marie's expression tightened. "Excuse me," she said. "I need to handle something." Livia watched her navigate through the crowd toward the disturbance. She considered following, then decided against it. Instead, she slipped out the side door that led to the gallery's small terrace. The night air was cool against her skin, smelling of salt water and expensive perfume from the party inside. She leaned against the railing, looking down at the harbor. Yachts bobbed gently in their slips, each one worth more money than she could conceptualize. Somewhere in the distance, music played. A party on one of the boats, probably. The kind of party where people like her, diplomatic children, gallery assistants, anyone useful but not quite wealthy enough, existed as decoration. Running away already? Livia spun around. A man stood in the doorway, backlit by the gallery lights. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit that looked like it had been custom-made by someone who understood fabric as an art form. As he stepped onto the terrace, the light caught his face. She'd seen beautiful men before. Monaco was full of them, polished, symmetrical, professionally attractive. This man was different. He had a face that looked like it had been broken and poorly reset, a scar running from his left temple to his jaw. His eyes were pale gray, almost colorless. He looked like violence wrapped in expensive tailoring. "I needed air," she said. "Terrible party." "Marie's your aunt?" "Unfortunately." He moved to the railing beside her, not close enough to crowd but near enough that she could smell his cologne. Something dark and woody. "Damien Varela." He didn't offer his hand. Livia didn't offer hers. "Livia Hart." "I know." His voice was quiet, controlled. "Ambassador's daughter. Art history degree from Oxford. Spent last year in Paris pretending to be someone else." She stiffened. "You've done your research." "Monaco is small. Information travels." He turned to look at her directly. "Your father is a careful man. He doesn't trust easily. And you know this how? We've met, professionally." Something in his tone suggested the meeting hadn't been pleasant. "He's right not to trust people here." "Is that a warning?" "An observation." Damien turned back to the harbor. "You don't belong in that room." "Excuse me?" "Everyone in there is playing a game. Networking, making deals, establishing hierarchies. You're standing out here because you find it exhausting." He glanced at her. "I'm not criticizing, just stating facts." Livia didn't know whether to be insulted or relieved that someone had finally said it out loud. "And you? What are you doing out here?" "Same thing, finding it exhausting." "But you still came." "Family obligation." His tone suggested this was not something he enjoyed. Marie insisted. They stood in silence for a moment. Inside, the party continued. Laughter, conversation, the soft sound of jazz from the gallery's sound system. Out here, it was just the two of them, and the Mediterranean stretching toward darkness. "Your aunt told me to be careful," Livia said, "about the company I keep." "She's right." Was that aimed at anyone specific? Damien's smile was brief and humorless. "Everyone specific. Monaco runs on money and secrets. The people in that room would sell their children if the price was right." "And you?" "I don't have children." "That's not what I meant." He looked at her again, and this time his expression was unreadable. "I know exactly what you meant." The door opened behind them. Marie appeared, her face tight with professional courtesy barely masking irritation. "Damien, I thought you'd left." "I was just going." He nodded to Livia. "Miss Hart." He brushed past Marie without another word. Livia watched him disappear into the gallery, then looked at Marie. "I thought you wanted me to be careful about company." "Damien, most of all." Marie's voice was quiet. "He's my sister's son, and I love him. But he's dangerous, Livia. Stay away from him." "Why?" "Because some people carry damage that spreads." Marie touched her shoulder gently. "Come inside. There's someone from the Musée d'Art Moderne who wants to meet you." Livia followed her back into the gallery, but she found herself glancing toward the entrance, looking for a tall figure in a dark suit. He'd already gone. But she didn't think about Damien Varela for the rest of the night, or that's what she told herself as she made conversation with museum curators and collectors, smiled at appropriate moments, and accepted business cards from people who promised to stay in touch. By the time her father's driver dropped her at the residence, it was past midnight. The building was quiet, most of the staff already gone home or retired to their quarters. Livia took the elevator to the third floor, kicked off her heels in the hallway, and padded barefoot to her room. She was halfway through removing her earrings when she noticed the light. Her sitting room was dark, but there was a glow coming from the corner. She moved closer, her heart rate picking up. Someone had been in her room. Then she saw what it was, and her breath caught. The piano. Her piano. The small upright her grandmother had left her. The one that had traveled with her from Washington to London to Paris, and finally, here, was destroyed. The lid was crushed inward, keys scattered across the floor. Someone had taken a sledgehammer to it, or something equally violent. Livia's hands were shaking. She pulled out her phone, started to call building security, then stopped. On top of the ruined piano sat a single white card. She picked it up with trembling fingers. "My apologies for the destruction. A replacement will arrive tomorrow. DV." She read it 3 times before the implication sank in. Damien Varela had been in her room, had somehow gotten past building security, past her father's protective measures, past everything designed to keep her safe, and he destroyed her piano. No, that wasn't right. Looking at the damage again, she could see it wasn't deliberate destruction. The piano had been crushed by something heavy falling on it. An accident. But how? And why was he apologizing for it? Livia sat down on her bed, still holding the card. Her hands had stopped shaking, but her mind was racing. She should call her father, call security, report this immediately. Instead, she pulled out her phone and opened Google. Damien Varela Monaco brought up surprisingly little. A few mentions in business journals, always vague. Private investor, independent consultant, family business interests. Nothing specific, nothing concrete. She tried adding Marie Valmont to the search. That got her a society page photograph from 3 years ago. Marie at a charity gala with a man who could be Damien, though his face was turned away from the camera. Varela Family Monaco was more productive. A decades-old article about shipping interests. Another about real estate development. Nothing recent, nothing detailed. These people understood how to stay out of the news. Livia set her phone down and looked at the ruined piano again. Her grandmother had taught her to play on this instrument, taught her Chopin and Debussy in the sunroom of the Georgetown house, patient hands guiding hers across the keys. Now it was scrap wood and wire. She should be furious. Instead, she felt something else. Curiosity. Damien Varela had warned her about Monaco's games, then immediately involved her in one. Why? And how had he gotten into her room? The answer came at 7 the next morning, delivered in the form of 4 men in matching uniforms carrying a concert grand piano up the residence's main staircase. Livia stood in her doorway, still in her pajamas, watching them maneuver the massive instrument through the hallway. Behind them came a 5th man in a suit, carrying a clipboard and looking professionally neutral about the entire situation. "Miss Hart?" He consulted his papers. "Delivery from Maison Bourgeois. If you could sign here?" "I didn't order a piano." "No, miss, this is a gift." He showed her the paperwork. Yamaha CFX. Retail value approximately 150,000 euros. "Shall we place it in your sitting room?" 150,000 euros. Livia did the math automatically, over $160,000. For a piano, she should refuse it, send it back. Make a point about boundaries and appropriate behavior, and not accepting expensive gifts from strange men who broke into your room. "Miss?" The delivery man was waiting patiently. Through the doorway, she could see the wreckage of her grandmother's piano, already cleared to one side. Her father's staff worked fast. "Fine," she heard herself say. The sitting room. It took them 40 minutes to position the piano, tune it, and ensure everything was perfect. By the time they left, Livia was showered and dressed, standing in her sitting room staring at an instrument that cost more than many people's homes. There was another card on the music stand. The accident was mine. The replacement is inadequate but necessary. Play something angry. DV, Livia sat down at the bench. The piano was beautiful, flawless black lacquer, keys that felt like silk under her fingers. She played a scale. The tone was crystalline, perfect. She should call her father. Tell him everything. Let him handle this with diplomatic efficiency and protective fury. Instead, she played Rachmaninoff. The prelude in C-sharp minor. Dark, thunderous, the kind of music that sounded like a storm breaking against cliffs. When she finished, her hands were shaking again. Not from fear this time. From something else entirely. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Much better than Debussy. She stared at it for a long moment, then typed back, "How did you get my number?" The response came immediately. "Monaco is small. You broke into my room. Technically, I crashed into your room. There's a difference." Livia looked around her sitting room as though seeing it for the first time. The window facing the harbor, the balcony beyond, the building next door, slightly taller, with a clear line of sight into her space. She walked to the window. Across the narrow gap between buildings, she could see an office. Empty now, but with furniture that suggested regular use. Her phone buzzed again. The van lost control in the lobby. Cargo shifted. One crate came through your window. I came through after it. She remembered the noise last night. The crash that had woken her briefly before she dismissed it as something outside. Not outside. Inside. In her sitting room. You could have left a note explaining. I left a note apologizing. After destroying my grandmother's piano. Hence the replacement. It's too expensive. It's a piano. You need a piano. The transaction is complete. Livia stood at the window, phone in hand, looking across at that empty office. Somewhere in this city, Damien Varela was reading her messages, responding with the same controlled precision he'd shown at the gallery. She should block the number, report this to security. Put an end to whatever this was before it became something she couldn't control. Instead, she typed, "Thank you for the piano." 3 dots appeared, indicating he was typing. They disappeared. Reappeared. Disappeared again. Finally, "You're welcome." Nothing else. Livia waited for 5 minutes, but no additional messages came. She set her phone down and sat at the piano again. This time she played Debussy, Clair de Lune, gentle, romantic, everything the Rachmaninoff wasn't. When she finished, her phone stayed silent. Her father found her an hour later, still at the piano, working through a Chopin nocturne. "That's new," he said from the doorway. Livia's hands froze on the keys. "It's a replacement for grandmother's piano." Which was destroyed how exactly? Julian moved into the room, his expression carefully neutral. Security reported some kind of accident last night, a delivery van in the lobby. But they couldn't explain how your piano ended up crushed. Apparently a crate fell through the window. From a van in the lobby. He didn't sound convinced. 3 floors down. "I don't know the physics, Dad. I just know my piano was destroyed and someone sent a replacement." Someone. He picked up the card from the music stand, read it, set it down again. "DV. Care to elaborate?" Livia played a few notes, buying time. "Someone I met at the gallery opening. He was apologizing for the accident." Must have been some accident if he's sending pianos that cost more than a car. Her father sat on the arm of her sofa, watching her. "Who is he, Liv?" "Damien Varela, Marie Valmont's nephew." The change in her father's expression was subtle but unmistakable. His face went very still, the diplomatic mask sliding into place so smoothly she almost missed it. "I see. You know him." "Of him." Julian stood, walked to the window, looked out at the view. "He's not someone you should be accepting expensive gifts from." It's a replacement for something his accident destroyed. That's not a gift, it's compensation. It's a way to establish obligation." Her father turned to face her. "That's how people like the Varelas operate. They do you favors, they make themselves indispensable, and then one day they call in the debt. People like the Varelas." Livia closed the piano lid carefully. "What does that mean?" Her father was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was measured, careful. "The Varela family has been in Monaco for generations. They have legitimate business interests, real estate, shipping, investments. They also have less legitimate interests that I'm not at liberty to discuss. You're saying he's a criminal. I'm saying his family has complicated connections, and that you should stay away from him. He's Marie's nephew. Marie is a businesswoman who understands that family is complicated. She keeps Damien at arm's length for good reasons." Julian moved closer, his expression softening slightly. "I'm not trying to control your life, Liv. I'm trying to protect you. Monaco isn't like other cities. The rules are different here. Everyone keeps saying that, because it's true." He touched her shoulder gently. "Just promise me you'll be careful. No more accepting gifts from strange men, no matter how apologetic they are about destroying your property." After he left, Livia sat at the piano again. She didn't play, just ran her fingers over the keys, feeling their perfect smoothness. Her phone was in her pocket. She could block Damien's number right now. Delete the messages, pretend this morning never happened. Instead, she pulled it out and looked at their conversation. Brief, impersonal, transactional. Exactly what her father wanted. She typed, "My father says I should stay away from you." The response took longer this time, almost 5 minutes. Then, your father is right. That's it? No argument? Why would I argue with accurate information? Livia stared at the screen. You're dangerous. Yes. You're involved in illegal activities. That's a strong word. I prefer complicated. And I'm supposed to just accept that? You're supposed to do what your father says. Block this number. Forget you met me. Live your nice, safe life in your nice, safe residence and marry someone appropriate in 5 years. She should do exactly that, the smart, sensible thing. Instead, what if I don't want nice and safe? The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. When the message finally came, it was just 2 words. Then run. Livia didn't run. She went to work. Galerie Valmont occupied a prime corner location in Monte Carlo's shopping district, all glass and white walls and carefully curated emptiness. Livia spent her first week learning the inventory system, memorizing artists' names, and trying to decode the subtle hierarchy among the staff. Marie ruled from her office on the 2nd floor, appearing occasionally to approve purchases or schmooze important clients. The day-to-day operations fell to Philippe, the gallery manager, who had the perpetually harried expression of someone managing chaos through sheer force of will. The Moreau collection arrives Thursday, he told Livia on her 5th day, showing her the shipping manifest. 18 pieces. We need them cataloged, authenticated, and ready for display by Saturday. That's 2 days. Welcome to Monaco. Felipe handed her the paperwork. The opening is Saturday night. Half the city will be here. Everything must be perfect. Livia spent Thursday afternoon in the gallery's back room, carefully unpacking sculptures while a conservator examined each piece. The work was meticulous, absorbing. She'd missed this, the tactile reality of art, the weight of history in her hands. She was photographing a bronze when her phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. What are you doing Saturday night? She shouldn't respond. Hadn't responded to any of his messages since that first conversation, but her fingers moved anyway. Working, gallery opening, the Moreau collection, derivative impressionist sculpture, overpriced. You've seen it? I own 3 pieces. They're in storage, too boring to display. Livia looked at the bronze in front of her. It was beautiful in a conventional way, technically proficient, emotionally empty. Exactly the kind of art wealthy people bought because other wealthy people said it was valuable. Then why buy them? Investment. They appreciate predictably. Unlike actual good art, which is risky. That's depressing. That's Monaco, the same phrase he'd used at the gallery opening, that Marie had used, as though the city itself was an explanation for moral compromise. I have to work Saturday, she typed. Can't talk. I wasn't asking you to talk. She waited, but no clarification came. Typical. Damien Varela communicated in fragments, leaving her to assemble meaning from pieces. Livia? Philippe appeared in the doorway. We need you upstairs. Client consultation. She pocketed her phone and followed him to the main gallery, where a couple in their 60s were examining a massive canvas that looked like someone had thrown paint at it randomly. From Philippe's expression, they were important. Mr. and Mrs. Rousseau, this is Livia Hart, our new acquisition specialist. Philippe's smile was professional warmth. She's been cataloging the Moreau collection. Ambassador Hart's daughter, Mrs. Rousseau offered her hand. We've met your father. Charming man. They spent 20 minutes discussing the painting, its provenance, the artist's trajectory, comparable sales. Livia played her part, offering insights that were knowledgeable but not threatening. By the time they left, having purchased the canvas for an amount that made her mentally calculate how many scholarships it could fund, she was exhausted. Well done, Felipe said after they'd gone. The Rousseaus are significant collectors. Making a good impression matters. Does the art matter? He looked at her sharply. What do you mean? They didn't ask about the work itself, just the investment potential. That's what this is, Livia. Investment. The gallery exists to facilitate transactions between people with money and people who create things worth money. If you're looking for purity, you're in the wrong business. He wasn't wrong. She'd known this intellectually, had studied it academically, but confronting it daily was different. In Paris, the gallery had been small enough that passion occasionally outweighed profit. Here, everything was calculation. Her phone buzzed again as she walked home that evening. Another message from Damien. Still depressed about Monaco? How do you know I'm depressed? You have the look. I've seen it before. What look? Someone who wanted art but got commerce instead. She stopped walking, standing on the sidewalk while tourists flowed around her. How did he know? They'd met once, spoken briefly. She'd revealed nothing about her disappointment, her frustration with the gallery's transactional nature. Stop reading my mind, she typed. Not reading your mind. Reading your face. You're very transparent. I'm not. You are. It's refreshing. Most people here learn to lie before they learn to walk. And you? I learned to lie in utero. Family tradition. Despite herself, Livia smiled. There was something darkly funny about his honesty about dishonesty. What do you want? She typed. The response came quickly. Complicated question. Try me. This time the pause was longer. She'd almost given up when her phone finally buzzed. I want to show you something. Tomorrow night, after your gallery opening. My father says I shouldn't see you. I know. Marie says you're dangerous. Also accurate. Then why would I say yes? Because you're bored. Because you're frustrated. Because you came to Monaco looking for something and found expensive emptiness instead. Because I'm offering you a glimpse of the city no ambassador's daughter ever sees. She should say no. Firmly. Finally. Block the number and move on with her carefully planned life. Instead, what time? Saturday's gallery opening was as polished and soulless as Livia had expected. She spent 3 hours discussing the Moreau collection with collectors who cared about investment returns, critics who cared about their own prominence, and socialites who cared about being seen caring. By 10 o'clock, her face hurt from smiling. She was retrieving her coat when Marie found her. Leaving already? Long day. Livia pulled on her jacket. The opening was successful, though. Philippe says we sold 6 pieces. 7. The Rousseaus came back and bought another. Marie studied her. You look exhausted. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. Marie touched her arm gently. This isn't Paris, Livia. I know that's hard, but you're good at this work. Give it time. How much time did it take you to stop caring about the art and start caring about the transaction? Marie's expression shifted, something like sadness crossing her face. Longer than you'd think. Shorter than I'd hoped. She paused. Are you meeting someone tonight? The question was casual, but her eyes were sharp. Just going home. Because if you were meeting my nephew, I'd strongly advise against it. Livia kept her face neutral. Why do you assume I'd be meeting Damien? Because he asked about you 3 times this week. Because you have the look of someone about to make a mistake. Because I know my nephew, and when he wants something, he's persistent. I'm just going home, Livia repeated. Marie didn't look convinced, but she nodded. Be careful, please. Outside, the night was cool and clear. Monaco glittered below, all lights and luxury. Livia's phone buzzed as she reached the street, corner of Rue Grimaldi and Boulevard des Moulins. Black Mercedes. 10 minutes. She should go home. Call her father. Do the smart thing. She started walking toward Rue Grimaldi. The Mercedes was idling where he'd said, dark windows hiding the interior. As Livia approached, the back door opened. She hesitated for just a moment, then got in. Damien sat on the far side of the back seat wearing dark clothing that made him blend into the shadows. In the dim light, his scar looked deeper, his eyes more colorless. You came, he said. Apparently I make bad decisions. Good decisions are boring. He leaned forward and spoke to the driver in rapid French. The car pulled smoothly into traffic. Where are we going? Somewhere honest. They drove through Monte Carlo's familiar streets, then climbed into the hills above the city. The buildings grew less polished, the streets narrower. This wasn't tourist Monaco or wealthy Monaco. This was the city that existed between the photographs. The car stopped in front of what looked like a warehouse. Damien got out, waited for her to follow. Inside she could hear music, something with heavy bass, lots of drums. What is this? Fight night. He glanced at her. If you want to understand Monaco, you need to see where the money actually comes from. He opened the door. The warehouse had been converted into something between a nightclub and an arena. A boxing ring dominated the center, surrounded by crowds of people shouting in multiple languages. But this wasn't professional boxing. The fighters were brutal, unrefined, and the crowd wasn't watching sports, they were betting. Livia stood frozen just inside the door, taking it in. The violence, the money changing hands, the raw energy of it. "This is illegal," she said. "Very." Damien's hand was light on her lower back, guiding her through the crowd. "But very profitable." They climbed to a private box overlooking the ring. Inside, a handful of men in expensive suits were watching the fight, drinks in hand. They looked up as Damien entered, their expressions shifting from relaxed to alert. "Varela." The oldest one nodded. "Didn't expect you tonight. Last-minute decision." Damien didn't introduce Livia, but she felt every eye in the room assess her, categorize her, file her away for later use. They watched the fight. It was vicious. Two men beating each other with practiced efficiency while the crowd screamed. Livia found herself unable to look away. This was the city beneath the city. The truth under the polish. "Your father works very hard to pretend this doesn't exist," Damien said quietly, leaning close so only she could hear. "He negotiates with men who own these rings. He has dinner with their wives. He knows exactly what happens here." "And you?" "I own 3 of these venues. Used to own 5, but I sold 2 last year." His voice was matter of fact. This is what Marie meant when she said, "My family has complicated interests." The fight ended. One man left the ring conscious. The other was carried out. "Why bring me here?" Livia turned to face him. "To prove you're dangerous? I already knew that." "No." Damien's expression was unreadable. "To prove Monaco is dangerous. The city you see, the galleries, the yachts, the charity galas. It's theater. This is reality. And you should understand what you're living in before you decide whether to stay." One of the men in suits approached them, speaking to Damien in low tones. Something about numbers, percentages, problems in Nice. Damien listened, nodded, gave instructions. The man left. "I should go," Livia said. "I'll take you home." In the car they rode in silence. Livia watched the city transform as they descended back toward the harbor. The buildings becoming cleaner, the streets wider, everything returning to its carefully maintained facade. "Your father is going to know you went out tonight," Damien said eventually. "Someone will have seen you get in the car." "I know." "He'll be furious." "Probably." Was it worth it? She thought about the fight, the money, the casual violence, the truth of it. "I don't know yet." The car stopped outside her residence. Damien didn't move to open the door. "This is the part where you tell me you can't see me again," he said. "Can I see you again?" "No." "Why not?" "Because your father is right. Because Marie is right. Because getting close to me puts you in danger you can't even imagine." He finally looked at her directly. "Because I'm not a good person, Livia, and you deserve better than this." "Shouldn't I decide that?" "Not when the decision could get you killed." She stared at him. "What?" But he was already leaning forward, opening her door. "Good night, Miss Hart." She got out, her mind spinning. Before she could say anything else, the Mercedes pulled away, leaving her standing on the curb. Inside, the residence was quiet. She took the elevator to her floor, expecting her father to be waiting with questions and recriminations. Her sitting room was empty. No father, no confrontation. Just the piano, gleaming in the moonlight from the window. She sat down and played. Rachmaninoff again. The angry music Damien had requested. When she finished, her phone buzzed one last time. Perfect. She looked at the message for a long time. Then she typed, "What did you mean about getting killed?" No response came. She waited until midnight, but her phone stayed silent. Finally, she went to bed, but sleep was impossible. Her mind kept circling back to Damien's warning, the fight ring, the casual brutality of the city beneath the city. Somewhere in Monaco, in a world she was only beginning to understand, Damien Varela was keeping secrets that could get her killed. And instead of being terrified, Livia realized she wanted to know what they were. The silence from Damien's phone lasted 3 days. Livia threw herself into work, cataloging new acquisitions and preparing for an upcoming auction preview. She told herself she was relieved, that the distance was exactly what she needed. She was lying. On Tuesday afternoon, she was in the gallery's storage room when Philippe found her. "There's someone here to see you," he said, his expression odd. "In the main gallery." "A client?" He didn't say, just asked for you specifically. Livia set down the inventory list and followed Philippe upstairs. The gallery was empty except for a single figure standing in front of a large abstract canvas, all violent reds and blacks, the kind of painting that looked like emotion made visible. Damien turned as she approached. In daylight, in the gallery's white space, he looked different, still dangerous but also tired. There were shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping. "Miss Hart," he said formally. Philippe hovered near the stairs, clearly torn between professional discretion and curiosity. Livia waved him away. He retreated reluctantly, disappearing into the back office, but probably listening. "You stopped responding to my messages," she said. "I stopped sending them. There's a difference." "Why?" Damien looked back at the painting. "Because I made a mistake Saturday night, showing you that world, involving you in things you have no business seeing." "You mean treating me like an adult who can make her own decisions?" "I mean putting you at risk." His voice was flat. "Your father contacted me yesterday, made his position very clear." Livia felt heat rise in her face. "He had no right. He had every right. You're his daughter." Damien finally looked at her directly. "He also threatened to have me arrested if I contact you again." "On what grounds?" "He's creative. I'm sure he'd find something." A ghost of a smile crossed Damien's face. "Ambassadors have resources." "And yet you're here." "And yet I'm here." He moved closer, his voice dropping. "To tell you something important, something you need to understand before this goes any further." "Before what goes any further?" "This." He gestured between them. "Whatever this is becoming." Livia's heart was beating faster. Around them, the gallery was silent except for the faint hum of climate control. Through the windows, Monaco went about its polished business, tourists photographing yachts, shoppers carrying designer bags, the beautiful surface of things. "I'm listening," she said. Damien was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "When you were 7 years old, you were abducted from your school in Washington. 3 men, foreign nationals, took you from the playground during recess. Your father was working on something sensitive at the State Department. They wanted leverage." The world tilted slightly. Livia grabbed the edge of a nearby pedestal for balance. "How do you know about that?" "Because I was there." His voice was absolutely steady. "I was 24, working for my uncle in what you might call the security consulting business. We had contacts who heard about the kidnapping. My uncle sent me to verify the information, maybe facilitate negotiations if there was profit in it. You were going to ransom me. That was the plan." Damien's eyes never left hers. "But when I found you, locked in a basement in Baltimore, terrified and alone, I made a different choice. I killed 2 of the men who took you. The 3rd one ran. I carried you out of that house and left you at a police station with enough evidence to prove who you were." Livia's hands were shaking. She remembered fragments, darkness, cold, someone speaking a language she didn't understand. Then warmth, being carried, a voice saying, "It's okay, you're safe now." She'd always assumed it was police, FBI, someone official. "You saved me." "I saved you and then I left, disappeared before anyone could ask questions. Your father never knew who found you. The official story was an anonymous tip led to your rescue." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you need to understand what I am." Damien's voice was rough. "I went to that house planning to use a 7-year-old child as a bargaining chip. The fact that I changed my mind doesn't make me a good person. It makes me someone who occasionally chooses mercy over profit. That's not the same thing." She stared at him, trying to reconcile the man in front of her with the story he was telling. "My father knows, doesn't he? That's why he's so insistent I stay away from you." "He figured it out eventually. Took him years. But he's thorough." Damien stepped back, putting distance between them. "He's right to keep you away from me, Livia. I'm not the hero of this story. I'm barely even the anti-hero. And if I don't care about that, then you're not as smart as your Oxford degree suggests. Stop telling me what to think." Anger flared in her chest. "You saved my life. You gave me back to my father. That means something." It means I made one decent choice 15 years ago. It doesn't erase everything else I've done since. He moved toward the gallery entrance. Stay away from me. I mean it this time. Damien! But he was already gone, the door closing quietly behind him. Livia stood alone among the artwork, her mind reeling. Philippe emerged from the back office, his expression concerned. Are you all right? Fine. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. I need to make a phone call. She went to the break room, pulled out her phone, and called her father. He answered on the second ring. Livia, is everything okay? Did you threaten Damien Varela? Silence. Then, we should discuss this in person. Did you? I made my position clear regarding his contact with you. Yes. Her father's voice was careful. He told you about Washington. He told me he saved my life, that you've known for years who he was. Not years, I suspected, but I couldn't prove it until recently. She heard him exhale. Come home. We need to talk about this properly. There's nothing to talk about. He saved me. You've been lying about it. I've been protecting you from a complicated truth. His voice hardened. Damien Varela is not a good man, Liv. The fact that he made one decent choice doesn't change the dozens of terrible ones he's made before and since. You don't get to decide who I associate with. Actually, while you're living in the residence and working at a position I arranged, I have significant influence over exactly that. He paused. Come home. Please. Let's discuss this like adults. She ended the call. Her hands were still shaking. She looked at them, steady, capable hands that could identify brushwork techniques and date canvas material and arrange art in pleasing compositions. Hands that belonged to someone who thought she understood the world. She'd been wrong about so many things. Well, that night, Livia didn't go home. Instead, she walked Monaco's narrow streets until the sun set and the city transformed into its nighttime self. She ended up at a small cafe in the old town drinking espresso and watching people pass. Her phone buzzed constantly. Her father, calling every 20 minutes. Marie, leaving concerned voicemails. Even Philippe, asking if she was coming in tomorrow. She ignored all of them. Instead, she pulled up everything she could find about Damien Varela. The sparse news articles, the business registrations, the carefully buried connections to shipping companies and real estate developments and investment firms that barely existed on paper. And underneath it all, if you knew where to look, the fight rings, the protection rackets, the money laundering operations. His family's empire, built over generations, now spread across southern Europe like a cancer. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a text from the number she'd been expecting. Stop researching me. You won't like what you find. She typed back, I'm not a child anymore. Stop treating me like one. Then stop acting like one. Go home. Make peace with your father. Forget this happened. What if I can't? The response took longer this time. Then you're more stubborn than you are smart. Where are you? Somewhere you shouldn't follow. Try me. Another long pause, then, Chateau de Valcroix, private residence in the hills. Don't come here, Livia. She flagged down a taxi. The chateau was 20 minutes outside Monaco proper, perched on a hillside with views of the Mediterranean. Old money architecture, 19th century, all stone and formal gardens, and the kind of permanence that suggested generations of wealth. The taxi driver looked nervous when she gave him the address. You are certain, mademoiselle? I'm certain. He left her at the gates. Through the iron bars, she could see lights in the main house, cars parked in the circular drive. Expensive cars, the kind that cost more than most people earned in a year. She pressed the intercom button. Oui? A man's voice, professionally neutral. I'm here to see Damien Varela. Do you have an appointment? Tell him Livia Hart is at his gate. Silence. Then, 1 moment, please. 5 minutes passed. Livia was beginning to think she'd been forgotten when the gates swung open silently. A man in a dark suit appeared, gesturing for her to follow. Inside, the chateau was exactly what she'd expected. Old-world elegance, carefully maintained. But there was something else, too. An undercurrent of tension, men in suits stationed at doorways speaking quietly into earpieces. This wasn't just a residence, it was a fortress. The man led her to a study lined with books that looked genuinely read. Damien stood by the window, his back to her, looking out at the gardens. You're an idiot, he said without turning. So, I've been told. Your father is going to have me killed for this. Probably. Livia closed the door behind her. Why did you tell me? About Washington. You could have kept that secret forever. Because you deserve to know. He finally turned to face her. And because I'm tired of lying about it. You're tired of lying? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's rich, coming from someone who lies professionally. I lie about business, about money, and territories, and deals that keep my family's empire running. He moved closer. I don't lie about things that matter. And I matter? You shouldn't, but apparently you do. The admission hung between them. Outside, voices drifted up from the garden, people arriving for whatever business Damien conducted in this beautiful prison. I need to know something, Livia said. That night you took me to the fight ring. You said getting close to you could get me killed. What did you mean? Damien's expression shifted. My family is complicated. We have agreements with other families, territories, percentages, spheres of influence. Those agreements are delicate. And your father is currently negotiating something that threatens those agreements. Trade regulations that would make certain shipping routes less profitable. Financial transparency requirements that would expose income streams we prefer to keep private. He poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter. My uncle and his associates are not pleased. What does that have to do with me? Everything. Damien drank. Your leverage, Livia. The ambassador's daughter, conveniently located in Monaco, working at a gallery owned by my aunt. If my family wanted to pressure your father into reconsidering his positions, you'd be the obvious tool. The room felt suddenly colder. They'd kidnap me. They'd consider it. Some already have. And you? I told them it was off the table. His voice was flat. That's why I've been keeping my distance. Why I tried to warn you away. Because the more they see you with me, the more they think I have influence, access, the ability to make things happen. Do you? Not anymore. He set down his glass. I told my uncle 2 days ago that I wouldn't be part of any operation involving you. He was less than thrilled. What does that mean? It means I chose sides, yours, against my family's. Damien moved to the window again. It's not a decision I can take back. Livia's mind was racing. You're saying you've cut ties with your family because of me. Not cut ties. That's not how this works. But I've drawn a line, made my position clear. He looked at her. They won't touch you now. It would mean war within the family, but it also means you're under my protection, whether you want it or not. I never asked for that. I know. Something like regret crossed his face. But it's done anyway. The door opened. A woman entered, 60, elegant, with Damien's pale eyes and aristocratic features. She looked at Livia with undisguised curiosity. So this is the girl causing all the trouble. Livia Hart, my mother, Elena Varela. Damien's voice was resigned. Mother, please don't interrogate my guest. I'm not interrogating. I'm observing. Elena moved closer, studying Livia like she was a painting being evaluated for purchase. You're very young. I'm 22. As I said, very young. Elena glanced at her son. Your uncle is asking for you. Something about the shipment from Marseille. Tell him I'm busy. Tell him yourself. He's downstairs. She turned to Livia. Would you like coffee, dear? This might take a while. Before Livia could answer, Elena was gone, the door closing softly behind her. Your family is... Livia searched for the right word. Terrifying, controlling, built on centuries of organized crime? Damien smiled without humor. Choose your adjective. I was going to say complicated. That too. He moved to the door. I need to deal with my uncle. You should leave. My driver will take you back to Monaco. What if I want to stay? Then you're even more stubborn than I thought. He paused. This isn't a game, Livia. The people downstairs, the business they conduct, it's not romance or adventure. It's violence with a profit margin. I'm not naive. No, but you're innocent. There's a difference. He opened the door. Wait here. Don't leave this room. I'll be back in 20 minutes. He was gone before she could argue. Livia stood alone in the study, surrounded by books and expensive furniture, and the weight of family history. Through the floor, she could hear voices, men speaking in French and Italian, discussing things in code words and careful phrases. She moved to the bookshelves, examining titles, philosophy, history, classic literature. Someone in this house was well read. She suspected it was Damien, though the image of him sitting peacefully with Voltaire seemed at odds with everything else she knew. A photograph on the desk caught her attention. Damien, maybe 20 years old, standing with an older man who had the same pale eyes, both in suits, both unsmiling. The older man had his hand on Damien's shoulder, pride or possession, impossible to tell. That's his uncle, Luca Varela. Livia spun around. A young woman stood in the doorway, maybe 30, dark-haired and beautiful in the way Monaco women seem to specialize in. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to snoop. Everyone snoops in this house. It's expected. Us. The woman extended her hand. Isabel, Damien's cousin. You're the American girl he's been obsessing over. I wouldn't say obsessing, I would. He threatened to break Marco's jaw last week when Marco suggested using you as leverage. Isabel sat in one of the leather chairs, crossing her legs elegantly. Damien doesn't usually threaten family. It caused quite the stir. I didn't ask him to do that. No, but he did it anyway. Because that's who Damien is, stupidly noble at the worst possible times. She studied Livia with interest. You really don't understand what you've walked into, do you? I'm beginning to get the picture. Doubtful. Isabel's smile was sharp. The Varela family has controlled certain aspects of this region's economy for 5 generations. Shipping, real estate, entertainment, security. We're the spider at the center of a very profitable web. Damien is my uncle's heir apparent, the next generation of leadership. He told me he drew a line, about me. He drew a suicide line. Isabel leaned forward. My uncle doesn't accept defiance. Not from outsiders, and especially not from family. Damien has been his favorite since childhood. This betrayal cuts deep. It's not betrayal. It's refusing to kidnap an innocent person. In this family, those are the same thing. Isabel stood, moved to the window. My advice? Walk away. Go back to your gallery, your diplomatic life, your safe little world. Because if you stay in Damien's orbit, one of 2 things will happen. Either my uncle will find a way to use you anyway, or Damien will sacrifice everything to protect you. Neither ends well. What if there's a third option? There isn't. Isabel turned to face her. This isn't a fairy tale. The dangerous man doesn't get redeemed by love. He just gets more dangerous, and the woman gets destroyed in the process. The door opened again. Damien appeared, his expression darker than before. Isabel, did my mother send you to terrorize my guest? I came on my own. Someone needs to give the girl realistic expectations. Isabel moved to the door. Think about what I said, Livia. Some situations don't have happy endings. After she left, Damien closed the door and leaned against it, looking exhausted. What did she tell you? That I should run away and never look back. She's right. He moved to the desk, poured another drink. My uncle wants to meet you. Why? To evaluate the situation personally, to see what all the fuss is about. He drank. I told him no. What happens if you keep telling him no? Eventually, he stops asking and starts taking. Damien set down the glass, which is why you need to leave Monaco. Tonight, if possible. You can't be serious. Completely serious. Your father can arrange a transfer. Paris, London, anywhere that isn't here. Make up an excuse, disappear quietly, and this all goes away. Livia moved closer to him. You want me to run. I want you to survive. And you? I'll handle my family. It's what I've been doing my entire life. By sacrificing what you want for what they need. He looked at her sharply. Don't pretend to understand my life. I understand that you saved me when you were 24. That you've spent 15 years working for a family you clearly don't respect. That you're standing here telling me to leave because you think it's the noble thing to do. She was close enough now to see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. I understand that you're just as trapped as I am. I'm not trapped. I'm committed. There's a difference. Is there? For a long moment, they stood there, the air between them charged with everything unsaid. Then Damien closed the distance. his hand coming up to cup her face with surprising gentleness. "If you stay," he said quietly, "everything changes. No going back to safe, no pretending Monaco is just art galleries and expensive lunches. You'll be part of this world, whether you want to be or not. Maybe I'm tired of safe. Safe keeps you alive. Alive isn't the same as living." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "You're going to regret this. Probably." She leaned into his touch. "But it'll be my regret. My choice." He kissed her then, and it wasn't gentle or romantic or any of the things first kisses were supposed to be. It was desperate and raw and tasted like expensive whiskey and poor decisions. His hand fisted in her hair, pulling her closer, and she went willingly, pressing against him like she could somehow merge their complicated lives into something simpler. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "This is a mistake," he said. "Definitely. You should still leave." "Not a chance," he laughed, a rough sound without much humor. "Stubborn." "So I've been told." The door opened without warning. Elena stood there, taking in the scene with raised eyebrows. "Luca wants to see both of you, now." Her tone suggested this wasn't a request. Damien's expression shifted, all softness disappearing. "Tell him we'll be down in a moment. He's not in a patient mood. He's never in a patient mood." Damien stepped back from Livia, his hand dropping. "Give us 5 minutes." After Elena left, he turned to Livia, his voice deadly serious. "When we go downstairs, don't speak unless directly addressed. Don't volunteer information. Don't try to be clever or charming. My uncle is testing us both. The less you engage, the better." "What's he testing for?" "Whether you're worth the trouble I'm causing, whether I'm weak enough to be manipulated through you." He touched her face again, briefly. "Show fear and he'll exploit it. Show defiance and he'll crush it. Show nothing and he'll lose interest." "That's a lot of pressure." "Welcome to my family." They walked downstairs together. The chateau's lower level had been transformed into something resembling a boardroom. Long table, leather chairs, men in expensive suits examining documents and speaking in low voices. At the head of the table sat a man who could only be Luca Varela. He had Damien's build and Elena's eyes, combined with an aura of absolute authority. When he looked up at their entrance, the room fell silent. "Damien, come sit." His voice was surprisingly gentle. "And bring your guest." They sat. Livia kept her expression neutral, her hands folded in her lap. Around the table, she counted 8 men, all watching with varying degrees of interest. This was evaluation, performance, everything Damien had warned her about. "So this is Ambassador Hart's daughter." Luca's eyes never left her face. "You're younger than I expected." Livia said nothing. Damien had told her not to speak. "My nephew tells me you're untouchable, that any plan involving you is off the table." Luca leaned back in his chair. "This creates complications. Your father is currently working to pass regulations that would cost our organization significant money. Having access to you would provide leverage. Yet Damien insists you're protected, family protected. Do you understand what that means?" She understood she wasn't supposed to answer, but Luca was waiting, his expression patient. "It means I'm under your protection," she said carefully, "as if I were family." "Precisely. And family is sacred in our tradition. We don't use family as tools." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Which puts us in an interesting position. Your father threatens our interests. You could solve that problem, but my nephew has declared you off limits." "Yes, sir." "Tell me, Miss Hart, do you love my nephew?" The question cut through the room like a blade. Every eye was on her now. Damien had gone very still beside her. Livia met Luca's gaze directly. "I care about him. Whether that's love? I don't know yet." Honest answer. "I appreciate honesty." Luca looked at Damien. "And you? Do you love this girl?" "I'm protecting her." Damien's voice was absolutely steady. "That should be enough." "Protection suggests obligation, not affection. I'm asking about your heart, nephew. Does she own it?" The silence stretched. Livia could hear her own heartbeat, loud in her ears. "Yes," Damien said finally. "She does." Luca's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the room. The other men exchanged glances. Isabel, standing in the doorway, looked resigned. "Then we have a problem," Luca said. "Because love makes you weak, vulnerable, and I cannot have my heir vulnerable to manipulation through an outsider." "She's not an outsider anymore." Damien's hand found Livia's under the table, gripping tight. "I've claimed her. That makes her family." "You've claimed her?" Luca's tone was dangerous now. "Without my permission. Without negotiation or consultation. You simply decided." "Yes." "That's not how this works, Damien. You know that. I know the rules. I'm choosing to break them." The temperature in the room dropped. Men shifted in their seats. Someone near the door touched the weapon Livia was certain he was carrying. Luca stood slowly, moving around the table until he stood directly in front of them. "You're willing to start a war within this family," he said quietly, "over a girl you've known for 3 weeks. If necessary. Even knowing it could cost you everything, your position, your inheritance, possibly your life." "Yes." Luca studied his nephew for a long moment. Then, shockingly, he laughed. "You're more like me than I thought." He returned to his seat. "Very well. The girl is protected, family protected. Anyone who touches her answers to me personally." Relief flooded through Livia. Beside her, Damien's grip on her hand loosened slightly. "However," Luca continued, "this protection comes with conditions. Miss Hart, you will marry my nephew. Immediately. A legal marriage, recognized by all relevant authorities. This makes you Varela family, in fact, not just declaration." The words hit like a physical blow. Livia's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Uncle," Damien started. "Non-negotiable." Luca's voice was iron. "You want her protected? She becomes family legally. Marriage binds her to us, to you. It prevents her father from extracting her easily, and it prevents my associates from seeing her as available leverage. Everyone wins. Except us," Livia found her voice. "Except our choice in the matter. You chose when you walked through my gates tonight, Miss Hart. You chose when you refused to leave when warned. You chose when you kissed my nephew in his study. Yes, I have cameras everywhere." Luca's smile was cold. "Now you live with the consequences of those choices." "This is insane," she said. "Forced marriage? Not forced. Strongly encouraged." He looked at Damien. "You have 48 hours. Marry her or I withdraw protection. Those are your options." The meeting was over. Men stood, gathering papers, speaking quietly. Luca disappeared into a side room. Livia sat frozen, her mind unable to process what had just happened. Damien pulled her to her feet, guided her out of the room and back upstairs to the study. Once inside, he closed the door and leaned against it. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have seen this coming. He's forcing us to get married. He's providing a solution that serves his interests. It's what he does. And we're just going to do it? Actually get married because your uncle demands it?" She paced the room, anger and fear mixing. "I barely know you, Damien. I don't even... This is crazy." "I know." He caught her hand, stopping her pacing. "But he's right about one thing. Marriage makes you legally family. It's the strongest protection I can offer. Protection I didn't ask for. Protection you need anyway." His voice was firm. "My uncle made his decree. Other families will have heard about it within the hour. If we don't marry, you become fair game again. Every organization with a grudge against your father will see you as available leverage. So my options are marry you or spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder." Essentially, yes. She pulled her hand free, moved to the window. Outside, the gardens were peaceful, beautiful, a lie of safety covering the truth beneath. "What if I say no?" she asked quietly. "What if I just leave Monaco like you suggested? Go to Paris, start over somewhere your uncle can't reach me?" "He can reach anywhere. But yes, you could run. Change your name, disappear into anonymity." Damien moved beside her. "Is that what you want?" She thought about Paris, the small gallery, the anonymous freedom, the life she'd had before Monaco complicated everything. It seemed impossibly distant now, like a dream from someone else's life. "I don't know what I want," she admitted. "A month ago, I was planning gallery exhibitions and thinking about grad school applications. Now I'm standing in a crime lord's chateau being told to marry a man I barely know to avoid being kidnapped. Not the trajectory you imagined." Not even close. She looked at him. Do you want this? The marriage? His expression was impossible to read. Want is complicated. Do I want you safe? Yes. Do I want you bound to my family's chaos? No. Do I want to wake up every morning knowing you're mine? More than I should. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. He touched her face, that same gentle gesture that seemed at odds with everything else about him. Marry me, Livia. Not because my uncle demands it. Not even because it keeps you safe. Marry me because somewhere in this disaster we found something real, something worth protecting. You're asking me to give up my entire life, and I'm asking you to start a different one, with me, in full knowledge of what that means. She closed her eyes. Her father would be devastated. Her mother would have opinions. Friends from Oxford would think she'd lost her mind. Every rational person in her life would tell her this was a mistake. But standing here, in this moment, with Damien's hand warm against her cheek and danger pressing in from all sides, rationality seemed less important than truth. And the truth was, she didn't want to leave. 48 hours, she said, opening her eyes. That's not much time to plan a wedding. Is that a yes? It's an acknowledgement of reality. She managed a weak smile. Ask me properly, not because your uncle demands it, because you want to. Damien dropped to one knee, right there in his uncle's study, and took her hand. Livia Hart, will you marry me and make both our lives infinitely more complicated? Yes, she said, I really, really will. He stood, pulled her against him, and kissed her like sealing a promise, like beginning something neither of them could control. Outside, Monaco glittered in the darkness, beautiful and dangerous and full of secrets. Inside, two people chose each other despite every reason not to, and set in motion a future they couldn't yet imagine. The drive back to Monaco was silent. Damien's driver navigated the winding roads with professional efficiency, while Livia sat in the back seat, watching her phone light up with increasingly frantic messages from her father. 16 missed calls. 23 text messages. 3 voicemails she couldn't bring herself to listen to. Damien sat beside her, his hand covering hers, thumb tracing slow circles against her palm. The gesture was almost absent-minded, like he needed the physical contact to confirm she was real. You don't have to tell him tonight, he said quietly. He already knows I'm with you. His security team probably tracked my phone the moment I got in the taxi. Then he knows you're safe. Safe is relative. She finally opened one of the text messages, all capital letters, demanding she call immediately. He's going to lose his mind. He's your father. It's his job. The car pulled up to the diplomatic residence. Every window blazed with light. Inside, she could see figures moving. Security personnel, probably. Her father marshaling his forces. I can come in with you, Damien offered. That'll make it worse. It's already catastrophic. Might as well have company. Despite everything, she smiled. You really know how to make a girl feel better. One of my many talents, he kissed her hand. Call me when you're ready. We have plans to make. She got out of the car, walked through the residence gates, and prepared for battle. Her father met her in the foyer. Julian Hart looked like he'd aged 5 years in 5 hours. Tie loosened, hair disheveled, eyes red-rimmed from stress or fury or both. My office, he said. Now. She followed him upstairs, past staff members who suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere. Inside his private office, he closed the door with exaggerated care, like he didn't trust himself to slam it. Where were you? You already know where I was. Your people tracked my phone. I want to hear it from you. He moved behind his desk, putting furniture between them like a barrier. You went to the Chateau de Valcroix to see Damien Varela after you threatened him? After you lied to me for 15 years about who saved my life? Her own anger surged. Yes, I went to see him, because unlike you, he told me the truth. The truth? Julian's laugh was harsh. He told you a version of events that makes him look heroic. Did he mention he was there to negotiate my daughter's ransom? That his family planned to sell you back to me like merchandise? He told me everything, including the part where he chose not to. One good choice doesn't erase a lifetime of criminal activity, Livia. He's dangerous. His family is dangerous. They traffic in human misery for profit. And you traffic in diplomatic courtesy with people just like them. Well, she moved closer to the desk. Don't pretend your hands are clean, Dad. You have dinner with men who own those fight rings. You negotiate with governments that disappear journalists. The only difference is your violence wears a suit. He flinched. That's not fair. None of this is fair. She sat down, suddenly exhausted. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask to be leverage or a diplomatic pawn or whatever I am to you. You're my daughter. That's what you are to me. His voice cracked slightly. My daughter, who I've spent 22 years trying to keep safe, who I failed to protect when she was 7 years old. The admission hung between them. In all the years since Washington, they had never discussed it directly. The kidnapping existed as subtext, the ghost at every family dinner, the reason behind every protective measure. That wasn't your fault, Livia said quietly. I was working on classified intelligence that made powerful people angry. I knew there were risks. I didn't take them seriously enough. He sat down heavily. When they took you, I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. Then you came back. And I promised myself I'd never let anything happen to you again. You can't protect me from everything. I can try. He looked at her directly. What did Varela want? When you went to his chateau? This was it. The moment that would change everything. His uncle wanted to meet me, to evaluate whether I was worth the trouble Damien was causing by protecting me. Her father went very still. And Luca Varela has given us 48 hours to get married. Otherwise, he withdraws protection and I become fair game for anyone with a grudge against you. The color drained from Julian's face. Married. Yes. To Damien Varela. Yes. He stood abruptly, walked to the window, stood there with his back to her. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. This is a negotiation tactic. They're using the threat of marriage to force my hand on the trade regulations. It's not a tactic, it's reality. Then we remove you from the situation entirely. Tonight. I'll have you on a plane to Washington within 2 hours. You can stay with your mother until this blows over. It won't blow over. Luca Varela's reach extends far beyond Monaco. Then London, Tokyo, somewhere they can't... Dad! She stood, moved to him. I already said yes. He turned, and the devastation on his face nearly broke her. What? Damien asked me to marry him. Properly. Not just because his uncle demanded it. And I said yes. You've known him 3 weeks. I know. He's a criminal. I know that too. This will destroy your future, your career, every plan you've made. Maybe I'm tired of following plans. She touched his arm. Maybe I want to make my own choices, even if they're mistakes. This isn't a mistake, Livia. It's suicide. And he pulled away. I forbid it. You can't. I'm your father, and I'm an adult. I can marry who I want. She kept her voice steady. I'd rather do this with your blessing, but I'll do it without if necessary. He stared at her like she'd become a stranger. He's brainwashed you somehow, used your gratitude about Washington to manipulate. Nobody manipulated me. I'm making a choice with full knowledge of the consequences. You can't possibly understand the consequences. These people, the Varelas, they don't love. They own. He's not asking you to be his wife. He's making you his possession. Then I'll prove you wrong. She moved to the door. The wedding is Friday morning. I hope you'll be there. Livia. But she was already leaving, walking down the hallway to her room while her father's voice called after her, desperate and furious and afraid. Inside her sitting room, the piano gleamed in the moonlight. She sat down and played without thinking, her fingers finding Chopin automatically. The music was sad and beautiful and completely insufficient for what she was feeling. Her phone buzzed. Damien. How bad? Catastrophic. You were right. Want me to come over? He'd probably shoot you. Fair point. Are you okay? She thought about that. Was she okay? She'd just agreed to marry a man she barely knew, defied her father, and committed herself to a life she couldn't begin to imagine. Ask me after the wedding, she typed. That's not reassuring. Nothing about this is reassuring. A pause, then. We don't have to do this. I can find another way to protect you. What other way? I don't know yet, but I'll figure something out. She stared at the message. He was offering her an escape route, a way to back out gracefully and return to safety. I don't want another way, she typed. I want this, us, whatever that means. even if it destroys everything else, especially then. Another pause, then, get some sleep. Tomorrow we plan a wedding in 36 hours. How romantic. I'm full of romance. You'll see. She smiled despite everything and went to bed. Sleep didn't come easily, but when it finally did, she dreamed of winter storms and piano music and a future she couldn't name. Botas. Morning brought Elena Varela to the residence. Livia was having coffee in the kitchen when the housekeeper announced a visitor. She walked to the foyer expecting Damien and found his mother instead, elegant in tailored black, carrying a garment bag. Miss Hart, we need to discuss your wedding. How did you get past security? Diplomatic credentials. My late husband was consul to 6 countries. Elena swept past her into the sitting room. You'll need a dress. I brought 3 options from Paris. We're similar sizes. She was unpacking the garment bag before Livia could fully process the situation. 3 dresses emerged, each one more beautiful than the last. Silk, lace, understated elegance. These are yours? From my own wedding, yes, 40 years ago. Elena held up a cream-colored dress with delicate beading. This was my favorite. Too sentimental to sell, too painful to keep looking at. I can't wear your wedding dress. Why not? You're marrying my son. That makes you family. She examined Livia critically. You're taller than I was. We'll need alterations. I've brought a seamstress. She's waiting downstairs. Mrs. Varela, Elena, we're going to be family. You should use my name. She continued unpacking. There are also shoes, a veil if you want one, and jewelry that's been in our family for 6 generations. The earrings are particularly lovely. Livia sank onto the sofa, overwhelmed. I don't understand. Your brother-in-law is forcing this marriage. Why are you helping? Elena paused, a dress draped over her arm. Luca is not forcing anything. He's providing a framework for something that was already happening. Damien and I barely know each other. My husband and I met 3 times before our wedding. Arranged marriage, very traditional. We learned to love each other over 43 years. She hung the dresses carefully. Sometimes choice comes after commitment, not before. That's different. You both agreed to the arrangement. Did we? Or did our families decide and we simply complied? Elena sat beside her. I'm not unsympathetic, Livia. I understand this is fast, frightening, not at all what you planned, but I've watched my son for 39 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. How does he look at me? Like you're water and he's been dying of thirst. Elena's smile was sad. Damien has spent his entire life doing what the family requires, sacrificing what he wants for what we need. This is the first time he's chosen himself. I won't undermine that. Even if it means defying Luca? Especially then. My brother-in-law is brilliant and ruthless and absolutely certain he knows what's best for everyone. Someone needs to prove him wrong occasionally. She stood. Now try on the dresses. We have very little time. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of fabric and pins, and Elena's seamstress making rapid alterations while speaking French too quickly for Livia to follow. The cream dress fit almost perfectly, just minor adjustments to the hem and waist. Beautiful, Elena declared when Livia stood in front of the mirror. My son is going to forget how to breathe. Looking at her reflection, Livia barely recognized herself. The girl who'd arrived in Monaco 6 weeks ago seemed like a different person. That Livia had been seeking safety, stability, a career path that made sense. This Livia was marrying into a crime family in 30 hours to avoid being kidnapped. Having second thoughts? Elena was watching her in the mirror. Constant second thoughts. Good. Only idiots are completely certain. She adjusted the veil. Do you love him? I don't know. Maybe. It's too soon to know. But you're willing to find out? Yes. Then that's enough. Elena began helping her out of the dress. Love is a decision as much as a feeling. You decide to stay, to work through problems, to choose each other daily. The butterflies and racing heart come and go. The decision is what endures. After Elena left, taking the dress for final alterations, Livia found her father in his office. He looked up from his computer, his expression carefully neutral. Can we talk? She asked. I'm very busy. Dad, please. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. She sat, gathering her thoughts. I know you're angry. I know you think I'm making a terrible mistake. Those are understatements. But I need you to understand something. This isn't about rebellion or romance or anything simple. It's about choosing a life that's mine, even if it's dangerous. You had a life. A good life. Gallery work, academic prospects, safety. I had your life. Your plans, your safety, your world. She leaned forward. I'm grateful for everything you've given me, but I need to figure out who I am when I'm not Ambassador Hart's daughter. And you think marrying a criminal will accomplish that? I think marrying Damien will force me to make my own choices, live with my own consequences. She paused. He told me something yesterday about why you hate him so much. Her father's expression hardened. What did he tell you? That you figured out he was the one who saved me. That you've known for years but couldn't prove it. That's why you've been so protective, so angry about him being in Monaco. He had no right. He had every right. It's his story, too. She watched her father's face. Why didn't you tell me? When you figured it out? Julian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was strained. Because I didn't want you to feel grateful to him. Didn't want you to romanticize a man who went to that house planning to ransom you. But he didn't ransom me. He saved me. One good choice, Liv, that's all it was. And you're binding your entire life to him because of it. I'm binding my life to him because when I'm with him, I feel like I can breathe. Like I'm allowed to be complicated and uncertain and afraid. She stood. The wedding is tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock at the cathedral. I'd really like you to walk me down the aisle. And if I refuse, then I'll walk alone. She moved to the door. I love you, Dad. I know this isn't what you wanted for me, but it's what I'm choosing. She left before he could respond. The rest of Thursday disappeared in logistics. Marie arrived with flowers, white roses and lilies that filled the sitting room with perfume. Felipe brought champagne that Livia couldn't drink because her stomach was in knots. Isabel appeared with a photographer who would document everything for family records. Luca wants proof the marriage is legitimate, she explained, for his files. How romantic. Romance is for fairy tales. This is business. But Isabel's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, I think you're brave. Possibly insane, but definitely brave. Damien called at 8 that evening. How are you holding up? I've tried on a wedding dress, arranged flowers, and had 3 people tell me I'm making the biggest mistake of my life, so typical Thursday. He laughed, and the sound eased some of the tension in her chest. I'm not allowed to see you tonight. My mother says it's bad luck. Your mother also chose my dress and organized my flowers. She's alarmingly efficient. She's a Varela. Efficiency is genetic. A pause. Are you scared? Terrified. Me too. The admission surprised her. Really? I'm marrying someone I barely know because my uncle demanded it and because I'm selfish enough to want you anyway. Of course I'm scared. That's not exactly reassuring. I'm not good at reassurance. I'm better at honesty. His voice lowered. Tomorrow morning, you become my wife. That means you're tied to every terrible thing my family has done and will do. You'll be complicit by association. Your name will be linked to mine in every database, every investigation, every news article about organized crime on the Riviera. I know. Do you? Really? Because once this happens, you can't take it back. Divorce won't erase the connection. You'll always be the woman who married into the Varela family. Why are you telling me this now? Because you should have one more chance to run, to say no, to choose differently. He exhaled slowly. I'll understand if you do. I'll find another way to keep you safe. But Livia, if you show up tomorrow, if you say those vows, I need you to mean them. I need to know this isn't just fear or pressure or gratitude for Washington. She sat on her bed, phone pressed to her ear, thinking about the question beneath his words. The piano you gave me, she said finally. I play it every night, usually Rachmaninoff, sometimes Debussy. And every time I sit down, I think about you crashing through my window, destroying my grandmother's piano, replacing it with something more valuable than you needed to give. I don't understand. You could have sent any piano, something simple, functional. But you sent a concert grand, something extraordinary, because you thought I deserved it. She lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. That's who you are, Damien. Someone who goes too far, gives too much, makes choices that don't make sense by any rational standard. And somehow, that's exactly what I need. Silence on the other end. Then, roughly, I don't deserve you. Probably not. I don't deserve you either. Maybe that makes us even. Nothing about us is even. Then we'll figure out the balance as we go. She closed her eyes. I'll see you tomorrow. At the cathedral. Don't be late. I'm never late. You better not start tomorrow. After they hung up, she played piano until midnight. Rachmaninoff, then Debussy, then pieces she made up as she went. Improvisation that sounded like uncertainty made music. At some point, she looked up to find her father standing in the doorway. I didn't hear you come in, she said. You were playing. He moved into the room, sat on the sofa. Your grandmother would have loved how you sound. She always said you had her hands. I miss her. She'd have opinions about tomorrow, strong ones. Livia turned to face him. Would she hate him? Julian considered the question. No, she'd understand him. Your grandmother survived the war in Poland, came to America alone, built a life from nothing. She understood what people do to survive. He paused. But she'd also be terrified for you. I'm terrified for me. Then why do it? She thought about how to explain. Do you remember when I was 16 and I wanted to spend the summer in Berlin studying art? You fought me for 3 months about it. And you finally said yes. Let me go even though you were afraid. Do you remember what you told me when you drove me to the airport? Her father smiled slightly. That fear is usually a sign you're growing. Exactly. I'm terrified, Dad, which means I'm growing into something new, someone who makes her own choices and lives with them. She stood, moved to him. Please be there tomorrow. Please walk me down the aisle and give me away, even if you hate this. Because I need to know you still love me even when I disappoint you. He pulled her into a hug, fierce and tight. You could never disappoint me. Terrify me, yes. Break my heart, absolutely. But disappoint, never. They stayed like that for a long moment, father and daughter, holding on while everything changed. I'll be there, he said finally. I won't smile, but I'll be there. That's all I'm asking. What? Friday morning arrived too quickly. Livia woke at 6 to find Monaco wrapped in fog, the city invisible beyond her windows. Appropriate weather for a day that felt impossible. Elena arrived at 7 with the seamstress, the photographer, and enough coffee to caffeinate an army. Marie came with final flower arrangements. Isabel brought makeup and jewelry and a surprising amount of champagne for 10 in the morning. Liquid courage, she explained, pouring glasses. Family tradition. By 9, Livia was dressed, hair pinned up with Elena's antique combs, wearing a dress that had survived 40 years and 1 marriage already. The woman in the mirror looked elegant, sophisticated, absolutely certain of her choices. The woman in the mirror was a convincing liar. Breathe, Elena said, adjusting the veil. In and out. Simple biology. I might throw up. Outside, please. The dress is irreplaceable. Despite everything, Livia laughed. The drive to the cathedral took 10 minutes. Small ceremony, Damien had said. Immediate family only. But when they arrived, Livia saw the full scope of what family meant to the Varellas. The cathedral was full, easily 100 people, maybe more. Men in expensive suits, women in designer clothes, children remarkably well-behaved given the circumstances. This wasn't intimate. This was a display of power. Oh God, she breathed. Smile, Elena whispered. You're representing the family now. Her father appeared at her side, offering his arm. He looked like he was preparing for execution, but he'd shown up. That was something. Last chance, he murmured as they moved toward the entrance. I know. I love you. I know that too. The doors opened. Music swelled, organ, traditional, the kind of sound that made everything feel weighty and permanent. They walked down the aisle together, past rows of strangers who would now be her family, toward an altar where Damien waited. He wore a dark suit that looked military in its precision. His face was carefully neutral, but when his eyes met hers, something shifted. Vulnerability? maybe, or fear, or hope. They reached the altar. Her father placed her hand in Damien's, then stepped back without a word. Luca Varela watched from the front pew, his expression unreadable. The priest began speaking in French, then English, covering all bases. Livia heard maybe half of it, her mind too busy cycling through panic and commitment and wondering if she could still run. Then Damien's hand tightened on hers, anchoring her. "The couple has prepared their own vows," the priest said. Damien went first. "I'm not good at promises. I've broken most of the ones I've made, but I promise you this. I will protect you with everything I have for as long as I live. I will tell you the truth even when it destroys us. I will give you choice even when it terrifies me. And I will try every day to be worthy of this impossible thing you're doing by saying yes." Her turn. She'd prepared something beautiful, poetic, appropriate for the occasion. Looking at him now, all of it disappeared. "I don't know if I love you yet," she said quietly. "I don't know if this is the right choice. But I know that when I'm with you, I feel more alive than I have in years. And I know that I'd rather make mistakes with you than play it safe alone. So I promise to stay, to try, to figure out if this thing between us is real or just beautiful destruction, and to mean these vows even when I don't understand them." The priest looked slightly concerned but continued. Rings were produced, white gold, simple, no enormous diamonds to declare wealth. Damien slid hers on carefully, his hand steady. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Damien kissed her, and the cathedral erupted in applause. It was performative, political, the sealing of alliances she didn't understand. But underneath all of that, it was also real. His mouth on hers, his hand cupping her face, the commitment they'd just made to something neither of them could control. When they broke apart, she was married. The reception happened in a blur. The chateau's gardens transformed into something from a magazine. Food she couldn't eat because her stomach was still in knots. Champagne she drank too quickly. Endless introductions to people whose names she'd never remember. Luca appeared at one point, raising his glass in a toast. "To family," he said simply. Everyone drank. Livia met his eyes and saw satisfaction there. He'd gotten what he wanted. Her bound to his nephew, her father's leverage neutralized. His family's position strengthened. But she'd gotten something too. Protection, yes, but also freedom from the expectations that had defined her entire life. No one expected Ambassador Hart's daughter to marry a criminal, which meant no one would expect anything predictable from her ever again. Later, as the sun set over the Mediterranean, Damien found her standing alone near the cliff edge. "Regretting it yet?" "Ask me in a week." He moved beside her, both of them looking out at the water. "I need to tell you something about why this happened. Why my uncle pushed for marriage so quickly." "I'm listening." "Your father's trade regulations aren't the only reason. There's something else. Information he has, classified intelligence about trafficking routes through Monaco. If that information becomes public, it destroys half my family's income." Her chest tightened. "And marrying me gives you access." "It gives them access, through me, to you, to your father's home, his files, his weaknesses." He turned to face her. "I won't do it, Livia. I won't use you that way. But they'll expect me to. And when I refuse, things will get complicated." "How complicated?" "War within the family kind of complicated." His expression was bleak. "I'm telling you now because you deserve to know what you've walked into. This marriage was supposed to make you safer. Instead, it's put you in the middle of something worse." She processed that. Around them, the party continued. Music, laughter, celebration of a union built on lies and leverage. "What are our options?" she asked. "Run. Disappear. I have resources, money hidden where my family can't reach it. We could vanish, start over somewhere they'd never think to look, and spend our lives hiding. Yes. What's the other option? Fight, stay in Monaco, refuse to give them what they want, and deal with the consequences." He touched her face. "Which could get us both killed." The sun had fully set now, leaving them in twilight. Monaco glittered below, beautiful and dangerous and full of secrets they were only beginning to understand. "We fight," Livia said. "We stay. We figure out how to protect my father's information without giving your family what they want." "That's not possible." "Then we make it possible." She took his hand. I didn't marry you to run away. I married you to choose a different life. That means dealing with the consequences. You're insane. Probably. You married me anyway. He kissed her again, slower this time, tasting like champagne and commitment and decisions they'd have to live with. When they finally pulled apart, his eyes were softer than she'd ever seen them. I meant what I said, he told her, in my vows. I'll try to be worthy of this. Then that's enough. They walked back to the party together, husband and wife, facing a future that would require everything they had. Behind them, the Mediterranean whispered against rocks, eternal and indifferent to human drama. Ahead, Monaco waited, beautiful and brutal and absolutely unforgiving. And somewhere in the space between fear and choice, Livia Hart Varela decided that maybe love wasn't about certainty. Maybe it was about standing in the wreckage of your life and saying yes anyway. The Chateau guest suite became home for 3 days while they figured out where married people in their situation were supposed to live. Livia woke on Saturday morning to find Damien already dressed, standing at the window with his phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian that sounded like argument. When he noticed she was awake, he ended the call abruptly. My uncle wants to meet with us this afternoon. About what? Your father, his files, the classified information I told you about. Damien sat on the edge of the bed. He's going to ask you to help access it. And when I say no, he'll escalate, apply pressure, make threats that aren't quite threats. His jaw tightened. This is the part where the marriage stops being theoretical protection and becomes actual danger. Livia sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. Through the window, she could see the gardens where they'd celebrated yesterday, already being dismantled by staff, the beautiful facade coming down to reveal the machinery beneath. What do they want specifically? The files. Intelligence on trafficking routes. Your father has been coordinating with Interpol, tracking shipments through Monaco's port. Names, dates, organizations involved. If that information goes public, it triggers investigations that could dismantle half the operations in this region, including your families, especially my family's. He reached for her hand. Luca thinks you can get the files because you live in the residence. Have access your father trusts. He's not wrong about that. But you won't ask me to do it. No. Even if refusing costs you everything. Yes. His voice was absolute. I won't use you that way, Livia. I meant what I said in my vows. She thought about her father, working late in his office, protecting information that could save lives. Then she thought about the Varela family, generations of wealth built on human suffering. The choice should be simple, but nothing about this was simple. What if there was a different option, she said slowly. Something that protects the intelligence, but also diffuses the situation. I'm listening. The problem isn't the information itself. It's what happens when it becomes public. Investigations, arrests, prosecutions. She stood, pacing the room in the too large shirt she'd stolen from Damien's closet. But what if the families could restructure before that happens? Move their operations into legal territories, clean up the dirty money, become legitimate before the hammer falls. That's not how this works. You don't just decide to go legitimate. Why not? They have the capital, the connections, the infrastructure. They're already running businesses that could be legal if they removed the criminal elements. She turned to face him. What if we gave them a pathway? A way to transform their operations that's more profitable than fighting the inevitable? Damien stared at her. You want to help them go legitimate? I want to remove the target. If the families aren't trafficking anymore, the intelligence becomes irrelevant. The investigations lose their teeth. Everyone walks away intact. Oh, Luca will never agree to that. The family has been running these operations for 5 generations. Then we make him see that 5 more generations requires adaptation. She moved closer. I spent 2 years at Oxford studying art markets. Do you know what the biggest challenge is for wealthy collectors? Proving provenance. Establishing that their money is clean enough to spend publicly. I don't see the connection. Your family has billions in assets that can't be legitimized because the income sources are illegal. But art is the perfect vehicle for money laundering. Legal, portable, appreciating. What if we created a framework that transforms their dirty money into clean investment through legitimate art acquisitions and sales? He stood, started to pace himself. You're talking about restructuring the entire family business model. I'm talking about survival. Your uncle is smart enough to see the writing on the wall. Law enforcement cooperation is increasing. Financial transparency requirements are tightening. The old ways are dying. We offer him new ways that are actually more profitable and safer. And you think he'll just agree? Abandon generations of tradition because you present a clever alternative? No, but I think he'll listen if we come with numbers, projections, a real plan that shows how this benefits the family more than the status quo. She grabbed her phone. I need to make some calls. People from my Oxford program who work in high-end art finance, and I need access to your family's actual financial records. Those records don't officially exist. Then, unofficially, I need to see them. Damien watched her for a long moment. You're serious about this? Completely. We have, maybe 3 days before your uncle demands an answer? That's enough time to put together a proposal if we work fast. This is insane. You keep saying that, yet you keep letting me do insane things. She smiled despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. Make the calls. Get me the numbers. I'll handle the rest. He kissed her, quick and fierce. If this works, you'll have saved the family from itself. And if it doesn't, then we both end up dead. But at least we tried something interesting. The next 72 hours blurred into spreadsheets and phone calls, and Livia learning more about international money laundering than any gallery assistant should know. Damien's financial records were complex, deliberately obscured, but patterns emerged if you knew where to look. The Varela Empire generated roughly 400 million euros annually through various illegal operations. Trafficking brought in the most, followed by protection rackets, then the fight rings and other entertainment ventures. But overhead was massive, payoffs to officials, enforcement costs, losses from seizures and arrests. Net profit after expenses was maybe 200 million. Impressive, but not exceptional for an organization of their size. Legitimate art investment, however, could generate similar returns with significantly lower risk. High-end pieces appreciated at 10 to 15% annually. The market was global, minimally regulated, and offered perfect opportunities for strategic buying and selling that transformed questionable money into respectable wealth. Livia built a presentation that would have made her Oxford professors proud. Financial projections, market analysis, case studies of families who'd successfully transitioned from criminal enterprises to legitimate business. By Tuesday evening, she had something that looked almost possible. Damien reviewed it in his study while she waited, too anxious to sit. This is good, he said finally. Better than good. The numbers actually work. But will Luca listen? He'll listen. Whether he agrees is different. Damien closed the laptop. He's expecting us tomorrow morning, early. He wants his answer about your father's files. Then we give him a different answer than he's expecting. He's not going to be happy about that. Probably not. But he's a businessman first, criminal second. If we can prove this is more profitable, he'll at least consider it. That night, Livia barely slept. She kept running through the presentation, anticipating objections, preparing responses. Beside her, Damien was equally restless, both of them pretending to rest while their minds raced. At 3 a.m, she finally spoke into the darkness. What happens if this doesn't work? I told you, things get complicated. How complicated? He was quiet for a moment. Luca has been patient with me because I'm his heir, his favorite nephew. But patience has limits. If I defy him on something this important, he'll see it as betrayal. And then? And then he removes me from succession, possibly removes me from the family entirely, possibly removes me from life, depending how angry he is. She turned to face him in the darkness. You're risking everything for this. For me. For us. There's a difference. His hand found hers. I've spent my entire life doing what the family required, following orders, making sacrifices, becoming the person they needed. Maybe it's time I became the person I want to be instead. And who's that? Someone who chooses right over profitable. Someone who protects the people he loves, even when it costs everything. He pulled her closer. Someone worthy of you. You were already worthy. I really wasn't, but I'm trying to be. They made love then, slow and desperate and full of the knowledge that tomorrow might destroy them both. Afterward, they lay tangled together while the night slowly gave way to dawn. Luca Varela's office was in a building in Monte Carlo that officially housed import-export businesses. The 20th floor, behind doors that required 3 different security checks, was where actual business happened. Livia and Damien were escorted into a conference room at 9 sharp. Luca sat at the head of a long table, flanked by 4 men Livia recognized from the wedding, his inner circle, his counsel. Damien, Mrs. Varela. Luca's use of her married name was deliberate. Please sit. They sat. Livia had dressed carefully, professional but not intimidating, polished but not soft. The art world version of armor. I assume you have news regarding Ambassador Hart's files, Luca said. We have a proposal, Damien replied. Something that addresses your concerns more effectively than accessing classified intelligence. Luca's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the room. The other men leaned forward slightly. I'm listening. Livia opened her laptop, pulled up the presentation. The files you want contain information that threatens current operations. But current operations are already threatened by global law enforcement cooperation, financial transparency regulations, and international treaties your organization can't control. Accessing my father's intelligence delays the inevitable. It doesn't prevent it. Bold statement from someone married to this family for less than a week. But accurate. She clicked to the first slide, financial projections. Your organization generates $400 million annually. Net profit is approximately $200 million after expenses and losses. That's your baseline. One of the men spoke, his accent thick with Italian. How do you have access to those numbers? My husband gave them to me, because we're presenting a unified strategy. She clicked to the next slide. High-end art investment can match or exceed those returns while eliminating 90% of your current risks. No trafficking arrests, no prosecution exposure, no seizures or enforcement costs, just legitimate business that generates clean, inheritable wealth. She walked them through it systematically. Market analysis showing growth in contemporary art values. Case studies of collectors who'd built fortunes through strategic acquisitions. The infrastructure already in place through galleries like Marie's that could facilitate large transactions. You're suggesting we abandon proven income streams for speculation in paintings, one man said dismissively. I'm suggesting you transform illegal operations into legal ones before you have no choice. Law enforcement is closing in. You know it. My father's intelligence is just one piece of a larger puzzle that will eventually crush organizations like yours. She met Luca's eyes directly. But if you pivot now, you become the family that was smart enough to evolve, that builds dynasties legally, that passes wealth to your children and grandchildren without the constant threat of arrest or assassination. Luca leaned back in his chair, studying her. You've put considerable thought into this. I've put 3 days and no sleep into it. Because the alternative is you forcing my husband to choose between his family and his wife, and whatever he chooses destroys him. So you're protecting Damien. I'm protecting all of us. Your family, my father, the future we're all trying to build. She clicked to the final slide, a timeline for transition. This can happen gradually. You don't abandon current operations overnight, but you start shifting resources, building legitimate infrastructure, creating pathways for the money to become clean. In 5 years, you're a respected investment family. In 10, you're indistinguishable from old European money. The room was silent. Livia could hear her own heartbeat, loud and fast. Finally, Luca spoke. An Ambassador Hart's intelligence? You simply ignore it. My father's intelligence becomes irrelevant if there's nothing left to investigate. You're not trafficking anymore, so who cares what files he has? She closed her laptop. This isn't about protecting him at your expense. It's about making his information worthless by removing its targets. Clever. Luca stood, walked to the window overlooking Monaco. Extremely clever. You take my leverage against your father and turn it into a business opportunity. I take a zero-sum conflict and make it mutually beneficial. He turned to face her. Do you understand what you're asking? 5 generations of tradition, abandoned for art galleries and auction houses. I'm asking you to be the generation smart enough to survive. The others are extinct or in prison. You could be the one who builds something that lasts. Luca looked at Damien. This is your wife's plan. What's your position? I support it completely. The family has been heading toward catastrophe for years. This is the exit ramp before the crash. And if I refuse, if I insist you access Hart's files as originally planned? Damien stood, his voice absolutely steady. Then I refuse, and you do whatever you think is necessary about that. The tension in the room was suffocating. Livia watched the other men, saw them calculating, weighing loyalty against pragmatism. Luca moved back to his chair, sat down slowly. You're willing to defy me, publicly, in front of my counsel. Yes. Because you love this woman more than you respect family tradition. Because she's right, and because continuing down our current path destroys everything anyway. At least this way we control the transformation. Another endless silence. Then Luca smiled, cold and sharp. You've become interesting, nephew. I wasn't sure you had it in you. He looked at the other men. Thoughts? The Italian spoke first. The girl makes valid points. The pressure is increasing. Perhaps adaptation is wise. Another man, younger, shook his head. We abandon our foundation. We become weak. Legitimate business makes us vulnerable to regulations we currently ignore. Legitimate business also makes us untouchable by criminal prosecution, Livia countered. You can't arrest someone for buying art legally, even if the money originated questionably. The transformation legitimizes the capital. They debated for an hour. Financial projections, legal implications, the logistics of transitioning operations. Livia answered questions, defended her analysis, held her ground against men who'd built careers on intimidation. Finally, Luca raised his hand, silencing the room. I'll consider this proposal. Give me 1 week to review the numbers, consult with our financial advisors, determine feasibility. He looked at Livia. You've bought yourself time, Mrs. Varela. Use it wisely. What about my father's intelligence? Off the table, for now. If your plan proves viable, we have no need for it. His eyes went cold. But if this is a stalling tactic, if you're simply delaying while preparing some other strategy, the consequences will be severe. It's not a stalling tactic, it's a real solution. Then we'll see in 7 days. They were dismissed. Outside, in the elevator descending to street level, Damien pulled her against him. You were incredible. I was terrified. You were both. He kissed her forehead. You just stood in a room with 5 men who've killed for less and convinced them to consider abandoning their entire business model. I bought us a week. That's not the same as winning. It's more than we had this morning. The elevator doors opened onto the lobby. Sunshine streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, making Monaco look innocent and beautiful. A lie, but a convincing one. Livia's phone buzzed. A text from her father. We need to talk. Now. He knows, she said. Of course he knows. Luca probably had him surveilled. Damien's expression tightened. Do you want me to come with you? No, this conversation needs to happen alone. She found her father in his residence office, door closed, blinds drawn. He looked like he'd aged another 5 years in the past week. Sit down, Livia. She sat. He paced behind his desk, too agitated to be still. I've been informed that my classified intelligence has become a negotiation point between you and the Varela family. That's not exactly... Don't. His voice was sharp. Don't minimize this. You married into a crime family, and now you're actively involved in their operations. Do you understand the position that puts me in? I'm trying to defuse the situation. By offering them a roadmap to legitimize their criminal empire? By helping them avoid prosecution? He stopped pacing, facing her directly. That's not diffusing, Livia. That's collaboration. It's preventing bloodshed. If they stay in trafficking, people die. If they transition to legitimate business, those operations shut down. How is that collaboration? Because you're helping them escape consequences. They should face justice, not retirement planning. She stood, her own anger rising. And how many people die while we wait for perfect justice? How many victims while law enforcement builds cases that might take years? I'm offering a way to end the harm now. By letting them profit from it. They're already profiting. At least this way they stop creating new victims. He slammed his hand on the desk. You don't get to make that choice. You're not qualified to decide who deserves redemption and who deserves punishment. Neither are you. You sit in this office making deals with monsters every day, justifying it as diplomacy. The only difference is my monsters married me. The words hung between them, brutal and true. Julian's expression crumpled. Is that what you think of me? That I'm as bad as them? I think you're complicated, like everyone else. Like Damien, like me, like this entire situation. She moved around the desk. I'm not asking you to approve. I'm telling you what I've done and why. The Varellas are considering a transition to legitimate business. If they accept, trafficking through Monaco decreases dramatically. Your intelligence becomes less critical. And maybe, just maybe, we all survive this. And if they're lying, if this is a stalling tactic while they plan something worse, then we deal with it. But Dad, I have to try. I can't sit by and watch Damien get destroyed by his family or watch his family destroy innocent people. Not if there's another option. He studied her for a long moment. You really love him. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. Yes, I really do. Even knowing what he is. Because of what he is. What he's choosing to become. She touched his arm. You asked me once what I wanted from life. I want this, the messy, complicated, dangerous version where I get to make a difference. This isn't making a difference, Liv. It's jumping off a cliff and hoping you can fly. Then I guess I'm jumping. He pulled her into a hug, unexpected and fierce. If this goes wrong, if they hurt you, there's nowhere they can hide that I won't find them. I know. I mean it. Diplomatic immunity be damned. I'll burn Monaco to the ground if necessary. She held him tight, her father who'd protected her for 22 years, who was learning to let her protect herself. I love you, Dad. I love you too, even when you're being an idiot. The week passed in agonizing slowness. Livia worked at the gallery, trying to maintain normalcy while knowing everything could explode at any moment. Marie knew something was happening but didn't ask questions. Philippe assumed she was distracted by newlywed life and gave her easier assignments. Damien spent hours in meetings with his uncle's financial advisors, walking them through the proposal, answering technical questions. Each night he came home exhausted but cautiously optimistic. They're taking it seriously, he told her on Thursday night. Luca has accountants running numbers, lawyers examining legal frameworks. He's not dismissing it. But will he accept it? I don't know. He plays everything close. Friday morning, the summons came. Both of them to Luca's office, noon sharp. This time, the conference room was full. Not just the inner circle, but extended family. Elena, Isabel, men and women Livia recognized from the wedding. This was bigger than a business decision. This was family verdict. Luca stood at the head of the table, a thick folder in front of him. We've reviewed your proposal thoroughly, he began without preamble. Consulted with financial experts, legal advisors, industry specialists. The consensus is that your plan is viable, ambitious, but viable. Livia's heart hammered. Beside her, Damien had gone very still. However, Luca continued, viability isn't acceptance. What you're proposing requires unprecedented change. Restructuring that will take years, cost millions in transition expenses, and fundamentally alter our family's identity. Change or extinction, Damien said quietly. Those are the options. Perhaps. Or perhaps we double down on current operations, consolidate power, weather the storm of increased enforcement. That's not weathering a storm, that's sailing into a hurricane. Luca smiled faintly. You've become bold, nephew. Marriage suits you. He opened the folder. I'm accepting your proposal, conditionally. Relief flooded through Livia so intensely she had to grip the table for balance. Conditions? Damien asked. First, you lead the transition. This is your wife's plan, your endorsement. You manage implementation personally. Success or failure falls on you both. Agreed. Second, we don't abandon current operations overnight. Gradual reduction over 18 months while legitimate infrastructure builds. Some income streams continue until alternatives prove profitable. Which streams? The fight rings, protection services, real estate holdings. Trafficking ends immediately. Too risky, too visible, too likely to trigger the investigations we're trying to avoid. Livia found her voice. Trafficking ends completely? No phasing out? Completely. As of today. We notify our partners that Varela family is exiting that business permanently. Luca's expression was hard. Your plan works because it removes the most dangerous elements first. We demonstrate good faith by ending the worst practices. What about the people involved? She pressed. The ones who depended on those operations for income. They transition to other roles or find employment elsewhere. We're restructuring, not running a charity. But then his tone softened slightly. However, we'll provide severance packages, job placement assistance for those willing to move into legitimate work. Your influence, Mrs. Varela. She blinked. Mine? You argued that this transition should reduce harm. That includes our own people. We'll make reasonable accommodations. The third condition was financial. 10% of all art acquisition profits would go into a fund managed by Luca personally, ensuring family leadership maintained control. Damien negotiated it down to 7%, but the principle stood. Final condition, Luca said. You both understand that failure means consequences. If this plan costs the family more than current operations, if it exposes us to prosecution, if it weakens our position critically, you answer for it. We understand, Livia said. I want to be clear about what that means. Not just loss of position or inheritance. You'll have made enemies within the family. People who oppose this change, who lose income during transition. If you fail, I can't protect you from their retribution. Damien's hand found hers under the table. We understand the stakes. Luca looked at them both for a long moment, then nodded. Then we have an agreement. Welcome to the Leadership Council, Mrs. Varela. Try not to destroy us. The meeting dissolved into discussion of logistics, timelines, implementation strategies. Livia participated, answered questions, felt the weight of what they'd just committed to settling on her shoulders. Afterward, Isabel found her in the hallway. You actually did it. Convinced the old lion to change course. We'll see if it works. It'll work because you'll make it work. You're too stubborn to fail. Isabel's smile was genuine. Welcome to the family, the real family, not just the married-in version. That evening, Livia and Damien stood on the chateau terrace, watching the sun set over Monaco. The city glittered below, transforming into its nighttime self. We just committed to reorganizing a criminal empire, she said. Technically, transforming it into a legitimate business enterprise. Is there a difference? Time will tell. He pulled her closer. Having regrets? Constantly, but also... She trailed off, searching for words. Also feeling like maybe we're doing something that matters. Like maybe we can take something dark and make it less dark. That's optimistic. I'm an optimist who married a criminal. I have to be. He laughed, the sound carrying across the gardens. Fair point. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. I heard about the agreement. I'm not happy, but I'm proud of you. Be careful. She showed it to Damien. He read it, then pulled her against him. Your father is terrifying when he's protective. He learned from experience. She looked up at him. We're really doing this, rebuilding your family's legacy. Our family's legacy now. You married in. That makes it yours too. Lucky me. The luckiest. He kissed her, slow and deep, tasting like champagne and promises, and the beginning of something neither of them could fully imagine. Below, Monaco continued its beautiful deception. But up here, on this terrace, two people who'd chosen each other against every rational argument stood together and faced their impossible future. The worst was behind them, Livia thought. She was wrong about that. The worst was still ahead, waiting in the shadows Monaco cast so beautifully. But for tonight, in this moment, they had each other and a plan, and the stubborn belief that sometimes love could transform more than just two people. Sometimes it could transform everything. The opposition came faster than they'd anticipated. 3 days after Luca's announcement, Damien received a message that one of the trafficking coordinators, a man named Marco Tessari, who'd worked for the family for 20 years, was refusing to shut down operations. He had contacts, shipments already in motion, money on the line. He's saying Luca's gone soft, Damien told Livia that night, his voice tight with anger. That the family is being destroyed by outsider influence. Meaning me. Meaning you. He paced their bedroom at the chateau. Marco has allies, other men who oppose the transition. They're positioning this as my weakness, your manipulation. What does Luca say? That I need to handle it. Prove I can lead through resistance. Damien stopped pacing, faced her. Marco wants a meeting, tomorrow night. He's demanding I explain the decision face to face. That sounds like a trap. Probably, but I can't refuse without looking afraid. And fear is blood in the water with these people. Livia sat on the edge of the bed, thinking. Then we both go. Together. We present a unified front. Absolutely not. This could get violent. Which is exactly why I should be there. They're calling me the outsider, the manipulator. Let me speak for myself. She stood, moved to him. I talked Luca into this plan. I can handle Marco. Luca is reasonable underneath the ruthlessness. Marco is just ruthless. Then I'll be more ruthless. We don't have the luxury of protecting me from every conflict, Damien. Either I'm part of this family or I'm not. He studied her face for a long moment. You're terrifying sometimes. I learned from the best. The meeting was set for a warehouse in Nice, just across the border from Monaco. Neutral territory, theoretically safer than anywhere in the Varela sphere of direct control. Damien brought 4 security personnel. Livia brought her laptop and the kind of cold determination she'd seen in her father during difficult negotiations. Marco Tessari was exactly what she expected. Late 50s, expensive suit, eyes that had seen too much violence to be shocked by more. He sat at a scarred wooden table with 3 men flanking him, all radiating hostility. Damien and the American wife. Marco's smile didn't reach his eyes. How domestic. Marco. Damien's voice was controlled. You requested this meeting. I'm here. Talk. I'm told we're abandoning profitable operations because your wife thinks art galleries are the future. He looked at Livia. No disrespect, Mrs. Varela, but you've been in this family for 2 weeks. Some of us have been here for decades. Then you've been here long enough to see the walls closing in, Livia said evenly. Law enforcement coordination is tighter than ever. Financial tracking is more sophisticated. The old methods are dying. The old methods have sustained this family for generations, and they'll destroy it in the next generation if nothing changes. She opened her laptop, pulled up data she'd prepared. You coordinated 6 trafficking operations last year. 4 resulted in seizures. 1 ended with 3 of our people arrested. The profit margin after losses and legal fees was barely 15%. That's unsustainable. Marco's expression darkened. You've been reviewing my operations. I've been reviewing all operations. That's my job now. She turned the screen toward him. But here's what interests me about your work. You have extensive networks in Eastern Europe, connections to art collectors and auction houses. That infrastructure could be repurposed for legitimate art acquisition and transport. Higher profit margin, 0 prosecution risk. You want me to become an art dealer? I want you to become the head of our Eastern European art acquisition division. Salary 4 times what you're making now, plus commission on sales. Legal income you can spend publicly. Leave to your children. One of Marco's associates leaned forward. She's serious? Completely serious. Livia pulled up organizational charts. The new structure has positions for everyone willing to transition. We're not abandoning people. We're evolving the operation. And those who don't want to evolve? Receive generous severance and our gratitude for years of service. No punishment for choosing differently. She met Marco's eyes. But no sabotage either. No continued trafficking under Varela protection. That ends completely. Marco sat back, processing. Luca approved this structure? Luca approved my overall plan. The specific positions are mine to assign. She closed her laptop. I've spent the last week studying personnel files. You're one of the most effective coordinators we have. That skill set translates perfectly to legitimate art sourcing. I need someone who can navigate Eastern European bureaucracy, build relationships with collectors, move high-value items across borders legally. That's you. And if I refuse? Damien spoke for the first time since sitting down. Then you're choosing to work against family interests. That has consequences we'd both prefer to avoid. The threat hung in the air. Marco's hand moved slightly, and Livia knew there was a weapon somewhere on his person. Their security personnel shifted subtly. Then Marco laughed, breaking the tension. You married a strategist, Damien. I'll give you that. He looked at Livia with something approaching respect. 4 times my current salary? Plus commission. I have the contract here if you want to review it. And my team? The people who've worked with me for years? Positions for all of them. Logistics, transport, authentication. We need good people. Marco glanced at his associates, some silent conversation passing between them. Finally, he nodded. Show me the contract. They spent the next hour negotiating details. Salary structure, commission rates, the timeline for transitioning his current operations. Marco drove a hard bargain, but Livia had expected that. By the time they stood to leave, they had a signed agreement and Marco's grudging commitment. You're tougher than you look, Mrs. Varela, he said as they shook hands. I have to be. I married into this family. In the car driving back to Monaco, Damien pulled her against him. That was incredible. That was one person. We have dozens more who'll resist. But you just proved we can win them over. Not with threats, with opportunity. He kissed her temple. You're building something real here. We're building something. This only works if we're partners. Then we're partners. His voice was soft. In everything. The next 2 months were a marathon of negotiations, restructuring, and putting out fires. Livia worked 18-hour days, meeting with family members, presenting opportunities, building the framework for legitimate operations. Some accepted eagerly. Others required extensive convincing. A few refused entirely and took their severance packages, disappearing into retirement or other organizations. The trafficking operations shut down completely within 6 weeks. Luca made the announcement publicly at a family council meeting, declaring that Varela interests were focusing exclusively on legitimate business. The statement sent shockwaves through Monaco's underworld. You're making enemies, Isabel warned over lunch one afternoon. Other families who depended on those trafficking routes. They're losing money because of this. Let them be angry. We're not responsible for their business models. No, but they'll hold us responsible anyway. Isabel picked at her salad. There's talk. Threats against the family, against you specifically. Livia set down her fork. What kind of threats? The kind where people suggest the American wife needs to disappear so things can go back to normal. Isabel's voice was matter-of-fact. Damien knows. He's doubled your security without telling you. Of course he has. Livia looked around the cafe, suddenly seeing the 2 men at nearby tables differently. Protection, not coincidence. I'm not going to live in fear. Then live in awareness. These people don't make idle threats. That night, Livia confronted Damien about the security. You should have told me. I didn't want to worry you. I'm not a child who needs protecting from information. I'm your partner, remember? She moved closer. What are the actual threats? He hesitated, then pulled out his phone, showed her messages that made her blood run cold. Explicit descriptions of violence, promises to eliminate the outsider ruining Monaco's economy, crude threats against her personally. When did these start? 3 weeks ago. They've escalated since the trafficking shut down. He took back his phone. I'm handling it. How? By making it clear that touching you means war with the entire Varela family, by demonstrating that you're untouchable. His jaw tightened, and by tracking down the people making these threats and ensuring they understand consequences. You're threatening them back. I'm protecting what's mine. She should probably object to being called property. Instead, she kissed him hard enough to bruise. We protect each other, she said when they broke apart. That's the deal. Terrible deal. I got the better end of it. Shut up and take me to bed. He did, and for a few hours they forgot about threats and restructuring and the weight of transforming a criminal empire. They were just 2 people who'd chosen each other against impossible odds, making it work one day at a time. The crisis came in month 3. A shipment of art pieces from Prague, legitimate, expensive, part of their new acquisition strategy, was seized at the Italian border. Customs claimed irregularities in the documentation, but everyone knew what it really was. Someone had tipped off authorities, trying to prove the Varela transition was just money laundering under a new name. This could destroy everything, Damien said, staring at the customs report. If they prove the acquisitions are illegitimate, Luca's entire agreement falls apart. The acquisitions are legitimate. I personally verified every piece. Livia grabbed her phone. Who authenticated the shipment? Marco's team, the same people we just hired. Her stomach dropped. You think Marco set this up? Deliberately sabotaged the shipment to prove the plan doesn't work? I don't know. But if he did, I'll kill him myself. She'd never heard Damien sound that cold. This was the other side of him, the part that had grown up in violence, learned to survive through ruthlessness. "We need proof before we do anything," she said. "Let me check the documentation." She spent the next 6 hours reviewing every form, every certificate of authenticity, every customs declaration. The paperwork was perfect, which meant the problem wasn't documentation, it was someone actively working against them. At midnight, her phone rang. Unknown number. "Mrs. Varela?" A man's voice, heavily accented. "You don't know me, but I work customs at the Italian border. The seizure of your shipment was not standard procedure." "Who is this?" "Someone who prefers the Varela family transition to succeed. Someone who's tired of cleaning up trafficking casualties." He paused. "The seizure was ordered by an inspector who received payment from outside sources. I have documentation if you're interested." "Very interested. Send it to this number." 5 minutes later, her phone buzzed with image files. Bank transfers, email communications, evidence of bribery from a shell company she recognized. It belonged to the Corsini family, one of the organizations that had lost money when Varela trafficking ended. "They're sabotaging us," she told Damien, showing him the evidence. "The Corsinis paid customs to seize our shipment, make it look like we're still running criminal operations. Then we go to war. No, we go to Luca." She grabbed her coat. "This is bigger than us. This is an attack on family interests. He needs to handle it." They drove to the chateau at 1 in the morning, finding Luca still awake in his study, reviewing financial reports. "This better be important." Damien showed him the evidence. Luca's expression grew darker with each image. "The Corsinis are making a move, testing our resolve." "They're trying to prove the transition is fake," Livia said. "If they succeed, law enforcement investigates. The entire plan collapses." "Then we need to respond decisively." Luca stood. "I'll call a council meeting for tomorrow morning. We address this publicly." "What kind of response?" Damien asked carefully. "The kind that reminds Monaco who the Varellas are. Transition doesn't mean weakness." Luca looked at Livia. "Your plan works if we maintain respect. Right now the Corsinis are suggesting we've lost our edge. That can't stand." But the council meeting the next morning was tense. 20 family members packed into the conference room, all aware that crisis was brewing. Luca presented the evidence methodically, letting the betrayal sink in. "The Corsinis have chosen to make us look weak, to undermine our transition through sabotage." His voice was ice. "We have 2 options. Respond with traditional methods, violence, retaliation, the old ways, or respond with the new methods that Mrs. Varela has been building. I want a vote." Traditional methods won 7 votes. New methods won 8. The room was split almost exactly down the middle. "Tie-breaking vote goes to our transition leaders," Luca said. "Damien, Livia, your call." Livia stood, her heart pounding. This was it, the moment that would define whether the transition was real or just rhetoric. Traditional response means we abandon everything we've built. We prove the critics right, that we're still criminals just playing at legitimacy. We invite investigations that destroy the plan. She looked around the room. But doing nothing isn't an option either. The Corsinis need to understand consequences. "What do you propose?" one of the older men asked. "We use legal weapons. We have documentation of bribery, evidence of customs corruption. We provide that to Italian authorities, anonymously, untraceable. The Corsinis get investigated for the very crime they tried to pin on us. Their operations get scrutinized. They face the legal consequences we're now avoiding." "That's not decisive enough," someone argued. "They'll see it as weakness. They'll see it as evolution. We're not the family that solves problems with violence anymore. We're the family that solves them with lawyers, evidence, and political pressure. That's scarier in the long run." Marco spoke up from the back of the room. "She's right. I've been working the legitimate side for 2 months now. The profit margins are better, the risks are lower, and I sleep at night without worrying about arrest. That's power, real power, not the kind that gets you killed or imprisoned." Other voices joined in, arguing both sides. Finally, Luca raised his hand for silence. "We proceed with Mrs. Varela's plan. Anonymous evidence to Italian authorities. The Corsinis face investigation and legal pressure. We continue building our legitimate operations and prove that the transition is permanent." He looked directly at Livia. "But if this doesn't work, If the Corsinis escalate, we respond traditionally. Understood? Understood. The evidence was delivered to Italian authorities that afternoon through channels that couldn't be traced to the Varellas. Within 48 hours, the Corsini organization was facing corruption investigations, asset freezes, and scrutiny that would cripple their operations for years. The shipment from Prague was released once the customs inspector's bribery was exposed. The art pieces arrived in Monaco undamaged, were authenticated properly, and sold at auction for 3 times their acquisition cost. Point proven, Damien said when the sale closed. Legitimate business is more profitable. But Livia knew it wasn't over. The Corsinis would regroup, find new ways to attack. Other families would test the Varela transition, probing for weakness. This was just the first battle in a longer war. Still, they'd won, and winning felt like possibility. 6 months into the transition, Livia stood in Gallery Valmont's main exhibition space, looking at artwork that represented the family's new direction. Contemporary pieces from emerging Eastern European artists, acquired through Marco's legitimate networks. Asian antiquities sourced through new partnerships. Modern sculpture from African creators breaking into the international market. Every piece was documented, authenticated, purchased legally. Every transaction generated taxable income, employed legitimate workers, contributed to the actual economy. Marie found her standing in front of a massive canvas from a Romanian painter. You've transformed this gallery completely. We've transformed it, Livia corrected. I couldn't have done this without your expertise. My expertise was running a respectable gallery that occasionally laundered money for my nephew. Your expertise is building something that doesn't need the laundering. Marie touched her shoulder. I never thought I'd see the family go legitimate. You did the impossible. Damien did the impossible. I just showed him the path. You both did the impossible. Together. That's rarer than you think. That evening, Livia had dinner with her father at the residence. Their first private meal since the wedding, carefully scheduled and probably monitored by both their security teams. Your mother called, Julian said over wine. She's furious I let you marry into a crime family. Did you tell her it's not a crime family anymore? I tried. She didn't believe me. He set down his glass. Do you believe it? That they've really changed? Livia thought about the past 6 months. The trafficking operations shut down. The fight rings converted to legitimate entertainment venues. The protection rackets transformed into actual security consulting. Money still flowed, power still existed, but the mechanisms had fundamentally changed. I believe they're trying. I believe Damien is committed to making it work. The family's profit margins are already better than they were with illegal operations. She paused. But it's an ongoing process, not a finished transformation. And if they slide back, if the pressure gets too intense and they revert to old methods, then I deal with it as part of the family, not outside it. Her father was quiet for a moment. You've grown up. I keep expecting my little girl and finding this woman who negotiates with criminals and wins. I learned from you, diplomacy is just negotiation with higher stakes. Much higher stakes. He reached across the table, took her hand. I'm proud of you. Terrified for you, but proud. I'm terrified for me too, but I'm also happy. That counts for something. Later that night, Livia returned to the apartment she and Damien had finally moved into, a penthouse in Monte Carlo with views of the harbor and enough security to make Fort Knox jealous. He was waiting on the terrace, 2 glasses of wine already poured. How was dinner with the ambassador? Surprisingly pleasant. He stopped threatening to have you killed. Progress. Damien pulled her close. I have news. Luca is stepping back from day-to-day operations, officially making me head of family business interests. She pulled back to look at him. That's enormous. That's terrifying. It means everything we've built becomes my responsibility officially, our responsibility. We can handle it. You're very confident. I'm very stubborn. There's a difference. She kissed him softly. We've come this far. Why stop now? No reason I can think of. They stood on the terrace, looking out at Monaco's glittering nightscape, the city that had brought them together through violence and chaos, that had tested them in ways neither could have imagined. Do you ever regret it? Damien asked quietly. Saying yes to that proposal? Binding yourself to all this? Livia thought about the question seriously. 6 months ago, she'd been a gallery assistant with safe plans and predictable futures. Now she was married to a former criminal, running legitimate business operations for a family that had terrorized the Riviera for generations, living a life she couldn't have imagined in her wildest dreams. "I regret that the piano you gave me is too big for this apartment," she said finally. "And I regret that your mother keeps giving me jewelry that costs more than small countries. But you? Us? Never. Even when it's hard? Especially when it's hard, easy doesn't teach you anything." He kissed her then, deep and slow and full of promise. When they broke apart, his eyes were softer than she'd ever seen them. "I love you. I don't think I've said that clearly enough." "You've said it in 100 other ways, but hearing it is nice too." She smiled. "I love you too, even though you're a reformed criminal with control issues and a family that could populate a small city." Reformed-ish. Let's not oversell it. Fine. Reformed-ish criminal. Better? Much better. 1 year after the wedding, Livia stood in the same cathedral where they'd married, but this time for a different ceremony. The Varela Family Foundation was being officially launched, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting victims of trafficking, funding exit programs, and providing resources for people trying to leave criminal organizations. It was Damien's idea, surprisingly. A way to atone for the family's past while building a legitimate future. Livia had run with it, structuring the foundation, recruiting board members, ensuring it would actually help people rather than just function as a tax shelter. The cathedral was packed again, but this time with a different crowd. Former victims who'd been helped by early foundation programs, social workers and nonprofit leaders, journalists covering this unprecedented shift in Monaco's landscape, and yes, the Varela family, looking uncomfortable in their roles as philanthropists but showing up anyway. Luca gave the opening remarks, his speech carefully crafted to acknowledge past harms without admitting anything prosecutable. The Varela family has been part of Monaco's fabric for 5 generations. Today we commit to being part of its future in a new way, through support, resources, and active work to undo some of the damage caused by industries we once participated in. Damien spoke next, and Livia watched him command the room with the same authority he'd once used for darker purposes. "Change is possible. Transformation is real. This foundation exists because my wife believed people could be more than their worst choices. I'm proof of that. We're all proof of that." Then it was her turn. Livia stepped to the podium, looking out at faces that represented so many different pieces of this impossible year. "I came to Monaco planning to work in an art gallery. Instead, I married into a family that taught me about power, choice, and the difference between the two. This foundation is about giving people choices they didn't have before. Exit routes, support systems, the resources to build different lives." She found Damien in the crowd. Because sometimes the difference between a criminal and a citizen is just opportunity. The applause was genuine. Afterward, people crowded around, asking questions, sharing stories, connecting with the work. Livia spent 2 hours talking to former trafficking victims who'd found stability through foundation programs, hearing their stories, understanding the real impact of what they'd built. Elena found her near the end of the reception. "You've done something remarkable here. We've all done it together. Don't diminish your role. You're the reason any of this exists." Elena's eyes were bright. "When Damien brought you to the chateau that first night, I thought you were just another woman who'd fallen for his dangerous charm. I was wrong. You're the reason he's dangerous now, just in better ways. He was always capable of this. He just needed permission to try." "Maybe. Or maybe he needed you." Elena kissed her cheek. "Thank you for saving my son." As the cathedral emptied, Livia and Damien stood together in the same spot where they'd exchanged vows a year ago. "Think we'll make it another year?" he asked. "I think we'll make it 50 years. We're too stubborn to quit." 50 years of reformed-ish criminal activity? Sounds perfect. Sounds like us. They walked out of the cathedral together into Monaco's afternoon sunshine. Somewhere in the city, the gallery was preparing for another exhibition. The foundation was coordinating with social services across 3 countries. The family's legitimate businesses were generating record profits, and 2 people who'd started as strangers were building a life that defied every expectation. 3 months later, Livia found out she was pregnant. She told Damien over dinner at the chateau, watching his face cycle through shock, fear, and finally overwhelming joy. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby," she confirmed. "In Monaco, in this family, in this life we've built. Yes to all of that." He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something precious and breakable and absolutely essential. "This child is going to have the strangest family tree in Europe. Diplomat grandfather, reformed crime boss father, stubborn mother who married into chaos. Yeah, therapy bills are going to be significant. But they'll be loved. So loved." She pulled back to look at him. "Are you scared?" Terrified. But also, he touched her stomach gently, also more certain than I've ever been that we did the right thing. All of it. Every impossible choice that brought us here. Their daughter was born in May in a Monaco hospital with security that would have impressed heads of state. They named her Sophia, after Damien's grandmother who'd survived war and loss, and taught him that strength came in many forms. Julian held his granddaughter with tears in his eyes, all his objections to the marriage forgotten in the face of new life. Elena brought enough baby clothes to outfit triplets. Marie sent a solid gold rattle that was wildly impractical but beautiful. Isabel became the world's most fashionable godmother. And Luca, the feared patriarch who'd terrified Livia that first night at the chateau, sat in a rocking chair with Sophia asleep on his chest and said quietly, "Maybe this is what redemption looks like. New life. Better choices. Hope." 2 years later, Livia opened her own gallery in Paris, an extension of the Varela family's legitimate art business, but also entirely hers. She curated shows for emerging artists, the kind of work that would never sell for millions but mattered anyway. Damien split his time between Monaco and Paris, managing family interests that had become boring in the best possible way. They fought sometimes about normal things like whose turn it was to handle Sophia's 3 a.m., crying, or whether they should spend Christmas in Monaco or Washington. They made up in ways that proved the chemistry between them hadn't faded. They built a life that was messy and complicated and absolutely nothing like either of them had planned. And on their 5th anniversary, standing in the Paris gallery after a particularly successful opening, Damien pulled her close and said, "I would crash through your window 1,000 times if it meant ending up here." "Please don't. The piano was expensive enough the first time." "Fine, I would metaphorically crash through your window." "Much better." She kissed him, tasting champagne and promise, and 5 years of choosing each other daily. "Happy anniversary." "Happy anniversary." He pulled back slightly. "I got you something. If it's more jewelry that I'll never wear, it's better." He handed her a folder. Inside was documentation for a new foundation program, funding art therapy for trafficking survivors across Europe. "I thought we could run it together. Make something good from all the bad." She stared at the papers, then at him, and felt love so overwhelming it was almost painful. "You're serious?" "Completely. You wanted to make a difference through art. I wanted to atone for my family's past. This does both." She kissed him again, longer this time, not caring that people were still in the gallery, that Sophia was with Elena and probably being spoiled rotten, that life was complicated and imperfect. Because imperfect was working, complicated was beautiful, and choosing love over safety had given them everything that mattered. Monaco glittered in the distance, visible from the gallery's windows. The city that had brought them together through violence and chaos tested them with impossible choices, and somehow given them a future worth fighting for. Livia thought about the girl who'd arrived there 5 years ago, planning a careful life that made sense. That girl was gone, replaced by a woman who'd learned that the best lives were the ones you couldn't predict. "I love you," she told Damien. "Every complicated, reformed-ish, impossible piece of you. I love you too. Even when you're being stubborn and reckless and forcing me to be better than I am. Especially then." They stood together in the gallery, surrounded by art and possibility and the life they'd chosen against every rational argument. Behind them, 5 years of mistakes and growth and transformation. Ahead, a future they'd build together, one impossible choice at a time. And somewhere in Monaco, in the cathedral where they'd married, in the chateau where they'd fought for their future, in every corner of the city that had tested them, the story of Livia and Damien became legend. The ambassador's daughter, who married the crime boss and transformed an empire, the man who chose love over power and found both. It wasn't the story either of them had planned, but it was theirs, and that made it perfect.